Hi.
All right,
I'm just
we
gonna put on some
are.
pants. I'm still in my jammies.
That's fine. I'm technically in jammies.
I
Uh,
mean, I'm technically in jammies too.
all right, we're streaming, so we're
Hi.
we're we're fucking doing it. Welcome to Wolf Pack. It's been a while. All right, we're talking. We had already jumped into talking about genre, like current moves in literary and genre fiction,
Oh,
and about whether Wolf will get his like due as a popular writer. Um, Which Connor says no to. Jordan, you were gonna say something and then I cut you off so I could start the stream.
Oh, well, so the last thing that was said before I was going to say this was that, perhaps he's taking on more with like literary heads, and people who are writers. And so I was going to say that I recently, a couple months ago, started reading this current book series that isn't completed yet. So I read the first two books that exist. And they're definitely like popular sci-fi. It's definitely, I think it would probably be termed the new marketing term new adults, meaning like YA,
But kind of for adults too. Yeah,
but,
I get that. That
yeah.
makes sense. I've read a couple of books like that recently.
Yeah.
But it's very popular. And so the first book I was reading it, and I was like, if this book, right away it reminded me of Jean. But I was like, I'm not sure if this person actually read Gene Wolfe though. I wasn't so sure about the comparison yet, but I was feeling it. But I remember talking to my friend about it and being like, so I feel like if this goes in like a crazier direction, I could get into this, but so far it's like, pretty formulaic, whatever. I'm not wowed by it. The second book, definitely, I've been describing it as if like New Sun, if you went from New Sun to Short Sun and you skipped Long Sun in the middle. And there are at least two times that are like incredibly direct references to Gene Wolfe that I was just like, well, that's just like something that literally is like part of the book, like.
Well, is there like a character named Severian? Like how blatant is
It
it?
was along those lines. Like I think I actually sent Mark one of them. Somebody did a sailor joke that was like,
Oh, I remember you did.
Oh yeah. It's like they
the person says to the other person. And another one, well, so basically the entire structure of the second book is like, I would say is a reference to Gene Wolfe as well, where it's like the splitting between different people's consciousnesses and within the same brain and like different. It's basically like if somebody read these books and then said, you know what if the thing that Severian, I don't know if I want to like talk too much about it. Like, what if like this happened? What if this happened in a different way? Or like, what if this happened and it's like 10,000 years from like when this book happened or something? And something different happened. But it's very cool. It's called Gideon. The first book is called Gideon the Ninth. And I don't know if I actually recommend them because the reason I'm really into it is because it scratches like really particular itches for me, specifically the part of me that really loves stuff like Sailor Moon, even though it's not like that at all. It's very dark and like gross.
Is it like an anime? Is that the?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's like an anime. Yes.
Okay.
The part of me that likes anime.
I get that.
That
I
likes
get that.
And that likes magical girls and shit specifically. So
Yeah.
That's my review. I think they're cool. The end. But that's just an example. I've also never like read anything that the author said, so I don't know if she says like Gene Wolfe is cool. So I don't know if this author is going to usher in a popular interest in Gene Wolfe, but it's like, but this is definitely a very popular book that.
So my
doing weird stuff.
thinking is that I've seen most of like the references to Gene Wolfe that I've seen recently have been like in book blurbs. So not just like a writer in an interview or an essay or something talking about Gene Wolfe, but like on their actual book, there being a reference to Gene Wolfe. Usually it's like Gene Wolfe, Ursula, maybe Heinlein or something. Like those are these names that are getting dropped into the, I mean, a blurb is meant to sell a book, but there is an element of sort of critical praise that tends to happen in that stuff. And depending on where the blurb came from, it might be from a review or something. But I've been seeing, I think that Ursula is maybe going to have more of a moment in pop culture, and maybe is even than Gene. But I think
Do we feel that Ursula has never had a moment in pop culture?
No, I'm not saying that. I just mean like a resurgence of appreciation, like sort of.
I didn't mean that as an argument. I just didn't know where other people felt.
No, I mean, I think Ursula was a very like successful author in her time.
There'd be in trouble with Ursula because she's not like, she really muddies the waters if you're like all in on the right politics right now.
I'm sorry, how?
Like if you have the right politics right now, Ursula is like not, she doesn't really have your back. And so I could see her being like, it's kind of the same reason, like, why isn't Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison having a moment? And it's because if you're like, I don't know, if you have like CNN politics, the book is problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Ursula's definitely took a more radical tack in some of her more political
kind
work.
of explicitly against a lot of what's going on right now.
Tell me which things. I don't follow
you need to explain more because I don't.
I mean, Left Hand of Darkness, a lot of it is, I mean, the biggest, one of the most resounding Ursula quotes that always comes back to me is, I think it's in Left Hand of Darkness, where she talks about if you're on a road to get away from somewhere, you're still on the road to that place. And that you can't like change the world by just doing a 180 and trying to go in that direction. I mean, of course, she says this much more eloquently, but it's like, I feel like a reoccurring theme in Left Hand that like...
She's a Taoist, right? She's like pretty...
Yeah.
That shit.
Yeah, and then,
I think for me, the thing is like, I mean, I don't know. I'm highly cynical about larger culture in general. So my feeling would tend to be like, people have a way of missing the fucking point of things. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
Like, every time they've ever made a movie about a Philip K. Dick book, it has never been about the thing that those books were about. Like at the center. Like maybe it could be a movie that has a nice plot and some of the plot points are similar, but the crux of the thing that the book is about is always absent. And I feel like people have a way, Taoism is not something people are going to get into. Like, it's not happening, and they're going to find a way to just relate it back to whatever they need to relate it to. And then the Gene Wolfe thing is like, I think the same thing would happen to Gene Wolfe as like what's happened with Dune, where people, maybe if people get into reading Gene Wolfe, like they'll read the 4 books of New Sun, and they'll read them once. And they'll be like, that was interesting. And that'll be the end of it. Like how nobody fucking reads all 6 Dune books for some reason. Everyone
I was just yelling at Rupert Wondrowski about that.
It's fucking so annoying.
There's not enough jokes.
People want to have a fucking take on it, but they've only read either the first one or maybe the first 3, but rarely past that. And then they want to have a fucking take on it. And you're like, what the fuck? It's just like annoying to have to argue with people about this shit if they don't read the whole thing.
You're allowed to not read all of them, but you can't be like, well, this is what it's about.
You shouldn't have an
That's what
opinion
I'm
yet
I'm talking about having a take that you want to
exactly.
argue with me about.
All
Like,
the people I know that don't like Dune haven't read it.
I know, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like I like there's this thing that keeps coming up. Christian in my band, he's like has all these things he wants to say about like Frank Herbert's writing style and about the style of Dune. And I think like the things that he says totally track if you only read the first 3, but as soon as you read the last 3, it like blows the whole argument out of the water. But it's like this is the kind of, and like now that Dune is like popular again, it's like this keeps happening and it's so annoying. And it's like I don't know, but I see that happening with Gene Wolfe. Like if he becomes popular on a larger scale, it's going to be people read the first 4 books, they read them once, and then they're like, oh yeah, Gene Wolfe. They're like, Gene Wolfe is cool.
Yeah,
And that's like the whole
That's what
conversation.
being popular is.
I think any media, any like especially like genre fiction that becomes popular that was not written specifically to be like corporate media IP. I like if like a lot of YA or something, it sometimes feels like it's being written like they're writing a pitch for a movie or like a franchise. And obviously like Gene Wolfe and Frank Herbert and like those books were not really written with that kind of
they're not young adults.
They're not. I mean, they're like these sprawling epic works that are
poppy.
They're sprawling epic works for nerds, and that doesn't mean that they can't have some popular appeal. But when they kind of get imported into the mainstream, they're definitely going to lose a lot. I mean, even something like Game of Thrones, is arguably those books were kind of written to be corporate media IP also, but like
very
even then they end up being pretty like the experience of reading those books pretty different from watching the show. In some ways the show's better, but it's I don't know. I think that's just what happens in translation. Some stuff gets modified.
I think that all these other things can just be read also. You can just like read a chapter a night and get a story out of it. And like at every moment you're like, I know what's happening in this story.
Right.
I might not be picking up on the themes. There might be references or discussions where I can't quite follow it, but like I know what's happening in the story. You can't do that with Gene Wolfe. Gene Wolfe is work. And pop culture is not work. When I talk to Adam and he talks about why he doesn't like these books, it's because it takes a lot of work to do anything with them, That's why I think Gene Wolfe will always be a writer's writer and never a pop writer.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. I mean, it still could be done. It's the kind of thing where if you think about audiences or readers thinking about a movie of Dune like in the 70s, it was probably impossible to conceptualize that ever happening for like similar reasons. Like it's just so sprawling, it's so big, it's so complicated. I mean, at some point
there were multiple failures.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And well, okay. So there's a whole lot to talk about here, but one side thought I had early on in the conversation was I was thinking about the Jodorowsky Dune that never got made. If you've all seen that documentary, however, it did end up like influencing, I don't know, like pretty much the direction of science fiction films for decades following. In a way, I feel like Wolfe is doing that throughout literature, like sci-fi fantasy literature, going back to like what Jordan was saying. So that's like a little side thought I had. But anyway, like in the future, I could imagine someone trying to create some kind of New Sun thing. It would just be like kind of outside of our understanding of what things are as they stand.
It would be so hard to do. But I mean, I guess you could strip it down and just try to tell the story, and maybe that would be
not
workable.
Do we think that William S. Burroughs has ever had a pop moment?
I mean, they
Yeah.
did make a Naked Lunch movie.
That's what I'm talking about. I could
So-
see like what David Cronenberg did to Naked Lunch. Someone might be able to do to Dune, except that or Gene, except that I do think that like our culture's ability to produce David Cronenberg has kind of fallen apart.
Right.
Isn't he Canadian?
Our global culture, the
Okay.
you know,
Dude, I
the
saw
people
this-
who watch movies.
Did you watch that movie Possessor by his son,
No.
Brandon Cronenberg?
I've heard that his movies are pretty good.
It was okay. That's a side conversation. But if anyone checks out this movie Possessor, I'd be curious to know what you think. But I also think we have to like park on the Ursula K. Le Guin moment and question marking whether that has happened or not a little bit more. Like
There's been a cartoon.
so many. All right. So Earthsea, like that's been adapted and pretty popular. But how
Yeah.
come we?
She hated it, though, didn't she?
Oh,
How
the Ghibli Earthsea is apparently just not. I mean, I've seen it, but it's been a long time. It's not great. Like it's
by Miyazaki's son.
it was Goro's first movie, and everybody was like, we shouldn't have let Goro go at it on his own yet. Like this was a mistake.
And also the Sci-Fi Channel one she was mad about.
Was there a Sci-Fi Channel one? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
there was a live action.
Oh,
I think
That's-
it was a British production, right?
I
And
feel like I
he-
remember what the fuck is the one Lathe of Heaven? I feel like I remember the Lathe of Heaven movie being okay.
they make a movie out of that too.
Like a
Wow.
PC.
In like the
Nobody's seen
80s
that.
or something. I think it was in like the early 80s maybe.
Oh,
She didn't like Earthsea because she specifically made the characters to be like dark skinned.
Oh.
People.
Yeah, it's all white people.
With the zeitgeist, Ryan, people will like that. People like that story.
Yeah, but once they dig into her thing, she's
Right.
not
They're
a.
not gonna dig in.
But I don't think I don't think
They
so.
don't care.
No, people don't. They'll just recontextualize. Like there's not. People aren't going to be like. People don't even know what the fuck Taoism is to respond to it. Like you have to like
They
have
know
a
the
certain
word.
sense. Yeah, but they don't know what it means. And
Yeah,
that's why
exactly.
I'm saying-
The
And that's
why
the
I'm
first
saying,
thing
like-
written about that word is you can't know what it means, so they don't ever think like they need to.
But I'm
It'd be
saying
really
like
funny.
it doesn't even like there's no even I think most people don't even have a concept of that. Like I don't think there's it's like there if you don't like understand the concepts that she's talking about, you're just gonna like gloss over them and ignore them.
But there's enough like pretty looking things and whatnot and
Yeah.
set pieces that
Yeah.
you can do it without knowing that stuff. And again, I just don't feel like that's there for Jane.
Hmm.
Like
Johan-
I mean,
there's
I couldn't
definitely
agree
very
more.
interesting descriptions of things, but it's descriptions of things that make me feel like I'm actually tripping.
Johan's in the chat, and he said he thinks that if somebody had a fuller understanding of the books, they could maybe strip it down and adapt it. I feel like
think
it could. I
Longfellow
feel like
would
it
be the
could
one to do.
happen. I don't know that it would be good.
No fucking way. No, I'm saying they can't even make a movie about a Philip K. Dick book.
Right.
Like it's not. There's no fucking way. Like,
you seen
there's
Southland
no
Tales?
way.
Jen,
Oh,
What?
Dude,
have you seen Southland Tales?
I just watched it like
Yes.
I think
I
that's an
watched
accurate
it.
Philip K. Dick book.
I watched it a few months ago. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I want to see it again.
Hold on one moment.
it's not a Philip K. Dick book, but it is an accurate adaptation of Philip K. Dick.
It does have a feeling of a Philip K.
It definitely does.
I got
Oh,
it. I got
Richard-
that from the store.
Pretty good, but that's
What
obviously
did you say?
the Richard Linklater Scanner Darkly is.
No, they fucking left the whole ending off.
Oh, okay.
I remember. I mean, it's been a long time.
Yeah,
But I
me-
saw that movie and I had read that book when I saw the movie. I had read the book already, and I remember being like, "What the fuck?" Like, if there's no, they like left the whole interesting part that like ties it all together and just out, which is the ending.
Which book?
Scanner Darkly.
Scanner
Oh.
Darkly.
Yeah, that is a travesty.
I mean, it's what I'm saying is like
fun movie. I
even
like
something
rotoscoping.
Like Blade Runner. Like obviously, like Blade Runner is like a fun movie to watch. Like it's not a bad movie, but it's not. It leaves all of the content of the book out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Not
point
the
of the
same.
book isn't.
The book is so amazing. It's so cool how the book. I think about all the time about how everyone is obsessed with animals and all they want is a real animal. You know how it'd be so great to have, and they're like, oh, that's so good. And they talk about like, oh, there's like the owl, whatever in the movie, but they don't really like capture how meaningful owning an animal is and the lengths people go to seem like they own an animal.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about, I think that's the same one, although it's really easy to cross and forget which is which with Philip K. Dick, but like the one where with the empathy organ or something where you like hack in and everyone is in the consciousness of this guy who's like walking across the desert and you a turtle or something. It's really cool. Really cool book.
But like this all draws into the chapter of that we were talking about today, chapter 2 of the third book of Long Sun, because I think this chapter is it's like an example of something that I think that is happening in Long Sun a lot, which is just like Jean being so generous to us with the explanations, with the like clarity. Even the characters seem to have more clarity about what's going on than usual in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that if you're going to do, I mean, they won't do it because Shadow of the Torture has such a great name and more recognition among like metalheads and stuff. But if you really wanted to do a Jean movie, I feel like you'd have to start with Long Sun.
Long Sun would definitely be easier to make into a movie.
So, and it's got enough little things. I feel like you could try to slide it past like some budget people as being like, yeah, generation ship, flyers, gods, and possessions. Like you could do an elevator pitch that could, I feel like could hit for this book way easier than the other two parts of the cycle.
This book.
Well, you definitely can't do Short Sun.
No. This book reminds me of Lost a lot when I was reading it. Like, this just feels like an episode of Lost.
Yeah, they really liked it.
Right, stuff just like what, like people just stumbling onto things, and then
or just like it just. I think it's what Ryan was talking about. It's just I'm just saying that some of it feels episodic and like, ooh, now we're at the lake. You know?
Yeah.
Like some of it feels adventurous.
For sure, and I mean, I remember being struck by this when we first started Long Sun, but just how like readable it was in comparison to like, I mean, obviously I love New Sun, but it is work, and this is less work. I think this one at least gives you the option of putting less work into it. Like it's like, yeah, here's a story. You get the story and it's on top and you can read that. And then the more you dig into it, like the more like you get out of it, obviously. But I think New Sun really like resists any attempt to enjoy it casually.
I got you. I want to amend my statement that I do think, like, okay, even if things do become popular, that there are going to be several people who do get into those things in a deeper way. Like, there will be some people who, like, get into Ursula and then have to grapple with different things that she says and be like, I don't know what, this isn't what.
I imagine that it's got to be a non-zero number of people who, like, saw the bad Studio Ghibli movie or the bad sci-fi series and was like, or I mean, a lot of people read the Earthsea books as kids, and so even just thinking back to like, oh, I did read those books when I was a kid. I didn't, and I remember liking them or whatever. Maybe I'll give it another shot, especially because they're so small and manageable. And then when you get into it, it's like, oh wow, this is cool. Or then you find out that she wrote like, you know, Left Hand of Darkness, like the Hainish cycle, and you're like, oh, okay. And then that can just like blow your mind.
I think somebody might attempt to do something with Gene Wolfe. I don't think it will ever have a moment or catch on.
I think it's just too there's a density to the ideas that are there that I think, while you could strip it down and make something, it just wouldn't be. I don't know. I could see it just having a hard time breaking through to any kind of popularity, even if somebody did a very like surface level adaptation of it.
There's also no like vocal or visible fan base.
Yeah,
for the outside of people who like Gene Wolfe. You don't know.
It's true. It doesn't
like,
really make sense.
Everybody's aware of Dune and what people who are talking about Dune are like. Everybody's aware of Ursula Le Guin in some way. You found her in school, but like, if you don't know Gene, you don't know Gene. And pop culture has that whole like, I remember this from my kid thing going on. Like, there's not like, here's a new thing we want you to see. It's always like this thing that you vaguely remember, G.I. Joe. It's still there, you know.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense to adapt a book that has a really small fan base, like,
or just a closed mouth, tight knit fan base. You know, there's not really Gene proselytes.
To your point, like I was telling everyone before you got here, Connor, that the first day I was on tour, we were staying with some friends of Christian and Meredith, and the guy, at some point in the conversation, there was like a lull, and the guy was like, "You guys ever heard of Gene Wolfe?" And I just started uncontrollably laughing.
Yeah.
Every now and then,
it really confused him. But that, to your point, like that guy who was like, "Have you guys ever heard of Gene Wolfe?" Who's read like he's read the first 4 or whatever. Like he hasn't. I was like telling him how much he has to read Earth, but and then how much he has to read them all again. But that guy is like a reader guy. Like he reads like lots of books, you know. And he's just now like, there's this guy.
I was going to say that,
like that guy, he like reads like billions and billions of books, and he's like a big sci-fi head, and he's like just now on to Gene Wolfe. Like I think it's not.
Yeah, I
he's
feel
far
like
outside of the mainstream.
It's not a safe investment.
Well, yesterday at work, so
the fandom is not quiet or tight-lipped. It's just nobody's listening because they're very difficult to talk about.
That's true. Well, that was yesterday at work. One of my coworkers was like, "What are y'all doing this weekend?" I was like, "Oh, I have my book club." And they're like, "Oh, what book are you reading?" And then I was
exactly.
All right. So, and then I had to like tell them like, okay, we're in the 3rd book of the 2nd series of a 3-book series, each book of which includes 4+ books. and I've been in this book club.
Fine-tooth comb, and if we get lucky, we get through it.
Yeah,
after.
yeah. I was like, and I've been in this book club for 3 years, and they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, it's so hard to introduce these books to somebody, especially if you're like at the stage we're at now. If you're like in the middle of Shadow of the Lictor, or not Shadow, Sword of the Lictor, and you're like really excited about it, I feel like that's a way easier sell to somebody that you know. You know, you could be like, "Look, it's this cool book. This stuff is blowing my mind. It's really fun and interesting." But if you're where we are now, it's like, I do not know where to start with explaining what it is that I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And this is also a good point. It's very hard for us to make any kind of judgment of what the pop culture would feel about this book because we're so in it.
I mean, I think the fact that we are now 58-ish episodes into this book club series on YouTube, publicly available, and we have like 2 regular viewers, is pretty indicative of where the WOLFE fandom is right now. Oh, Johan's been speaking of viewers. Johan's been saying a lot of stuff. Let's see. So Johan says, "I think someone with a solid understanding of the fuller picture of New Sun could strip it down and adapt it." He says, "I think New Sun is a stripped down version of some bigger thing, and that's why it's so good, because the symbols deliver on the bigger image." I think someone could strip it down further and emphasize certain ideas more than others and make it a lot more tangible and still be good. I don't think Hollywood would greenlight anything New Sun related, though, ever, just because you can't pack it into a sellable script, I think. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Sorry.
It would be like a successful director who has this as his passion project and convinces Amazon based on like the success of their last movie, let me do the New Sun I've always wanted to do it since I was a kid. That's I feel like the scenario.
That's not gonna fucking happen.
That maybe in the 80s, like that shit could happen. Is not gonna happen now.
No. What about James Wan, the director of the wonderful Malignant film? Where he had a lot of success with the Conjuring movies, and so he I think using that goodwill made this absurd, ridiculous, amazing movie that I love. Really that's very strange. I think maybe someone like James Wan who has someone who really has some goodwill, and you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been able to make movies that people go and watch, then maybe. But I feel like, especially if it's an adaptation of an existing property that you'd have to secure rights for and all that, and the evidence for there being an existing fan base for that property being like, well, there's a kind of active Facebook group that's mostly libertarian Catholics in their 40s, and there's one YouTube show that 3 people watch.
There's 2 podcasts. There's 2 different podcasts.
2 podcasts. Okay, well,
yeah, more people would have to get into it.
It would have to break into. I think it would have to be on the back of a more contemporary writer having a big hit, either as a book or an adapted movie or series, and then that person being like, this, like, Gene Wolfe is my shit, you have to read this,
Yes.
and then maybe like some people getting into it. and then they could greenlight something
on the level that people are making merch on Etsy to sell of Caesarean. Like that's I think our hurdle.
We should start making T-shirts out of like all the book covers, like the weird book covers.
There was a Silk for Calde shirt on one of those sites for a while, but I bookmarked it, being like, I'm going to need this one day, but it disappeared.
Oh wow!
It no longer goes.
Well, it's not hard to make T-shirts.
I think it's important also that we demonstrate that we know that the low viewership of this particular program is really not a reflection on WOLFE at all. It's because we're insufferable.
I think that's fair.
And
yeah.
Absolutely.
But we know that.
Also, okay, this is on Amazon, but this is very ugly.
Oh, yeah, that looks kind of like the one that...
That is an ugly ass shirt.
It's a very bad shirt.
I would not wear that.
No.
The big triangle, though, is sort of zeitgeist.
There's just like all the cover art for these books is so cool. Like, why would you not just take some of the cool cover art, especially from some of the international editions? It's like that. I've got that Left Hand of Darkness shirt. It fucking rules. So maybe there's a market for like, who knows? Probably not. I don't know. We could. I bet we could sell a bunch to the Facebook group.
Somebody on Reddit is saying that they want to make Silk for Calde yard signs, and somebody else is saying that they want a Che Guevara style T-shirt of Mayterra Mint.
Hey, that's really relevant to this chapter too.
That's very
I
cool.
do want to say something about podcasts and stuff before we get into this chapter.
Bodies.
There was recently a science fiction Discord server or something discussing about Gene Wolfe, and Mark Aramini attended it, and it was a multiple day affair, and he attended it the first day affair, and somebody contacted him saying, you really need to stick to the spoiler zones. And according to him, he said, oh, okay, and he did that for the rest of the day, and then when he tried to go back the next day, his account had been suspended.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
So wait, so there was a
Culture.
Sun Cycle like discussion group symposium, online symposium thing that was happening.
It looked to me like it was maybe Gene Wolfe in general, but I assume that's probably Book of the New Sun exclusively.
Right. And so there were spoiler free zones.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Threads. There were threads that were marked for spoiler free and threads that were marked for you can talk about.
I mean,
spoilers.
I guess that's all right, but that's
You still
man.
won't know. You
Yeah,
still
like-
won't know.
Yeah,
What's the point?
but it's I think that it's run by a bunch of people who just like sci-fi, and somebody was like, we gotta do Gene, and they're like, sure, we'll treat it like the rest of the sci-fi books because
Right.
Oh, you're probably
that's
right.
what this is, sci-fi.
This book is about what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably they followed the normal like course of events that they usually do. They've probably put on something like this before.
I also don't think that
Can you imagine
this is why
someone
Mark
was
got kicked out.
someone was so okay, true. Because I was gonna say, can you imagine someone did something so silly that we side on Mark? Yeah,
It's
maybe,
gonna happen.
maybe it was more. Maybe it was something else.
I feel like as just time goes by, more and more, we're gonna end up having to, have a whole season where we're working with Mark.
We got to quash this beef.
Yeah.
It's good. We're gonna be thrust into some situation where like the only way that we can save, the world is by working with Mark. It'll be very
For
poignant.
sure. Absolutely, I could see that happening. I'll
And at the end, it'll seem like maybe we changed him, but then it'll be like, haha, no, you didn't. That'll be how the season ends.
no, I'm gonna marry him at the end.
No, he just recently got engaged.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations, Air Meaning.
That's really nice.
He posted a picture of him
Congratulations.
and his wife to the Gene Wolfe Book of the New Sun Facebook group.
She
Nice.
jacked?
Huh?
Is she jacked?
No, she's winnowy.
Huh.
You can
Okay.
pick her up.
No. He can't. She can't be jacked because he would be. He would make him insecure.
Yeah, no, they're Popeye and olive oil.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to
Classic
be.
style.
Yeah.
Well, Popeye's also winnowy.
No, he's got those gigantic forearms.
Well, yeah, just the forearms, and then when he
Just like Mark.
It still disqualifies you from winnowy status, even if it's just forearms.
okay, I'll accept.
You're a new thing with those kind of forearms.
Also, he's a
Popeye
cartoon
really is his
character.
own
Yeah, you are a new thing for sure. How would
I've
you
been
do that?
I've been wanting to rewatch that Altman movie recently.
Oh,
It's
so
really
good.
good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So are the
You know that
next
whole
Fleischer
thing. You know that whole town still exists.
My therapist
Malta.
is her husband is Maltese, and she spends a lot of time in Malta. And when I first found that, I was like, "Have you been to the Popeye town?" And she's like, "Yeah, definitely." So,
Christian's Maltese.
Nice.
oh yeah, I've talked to Christian about it also. I think
Yeah.
Nice. So cool.
I thought they just made Falcons.
they do. They make Falcons and Robert
They make
Altman
them.
TV
I
sets.
didn't know
or
that they had
movie sets.
It seems like a cool. It's such a cool, weird scene. I mean,
and
they just have been like colonized by literally every culture like in the world. So it's just like a total mishmash.
Yeah,
It's the setting of Catch-22, isn't it?
no, it's an island. Pianosa is
For some
the
reason, I
setting
thought
of
I-
Catch-22.
Malta came onto my radar for some reason with
It might be in the same area. I can't remember if that was supposed to be in the Mediterranean or the South Pacific.
those little milk duds they make are really great too.
Wait, Catch-22 is in the Mediterranean.
It is?
Yeah, all their things are in Europe.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right.
All the missions are over Europe.
It's been a long time since I read that book.
If it was in the Pacific period, they would have been on some kind of aircraft carrier or something.
Well, right. Yeah, I guess they were running missions off of an island. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, whatever. I mean,
While I
Sure.
would love to wear a shirt of Che Mint, this chapter, it's very clear that Mint is a lot more ISIS than she is Che.
I guess we should talk about the book, huh?
Yeah.
This is a really great chapter, and I'll actually be surprised if we can get through the whole thing. So much stuff happens.
It is. A lot happens.
But I mean, yeah, so it opens up with Mint being very explicitly possessed in, I feel like, a very uncharacteristically direct wolf description. I mean, there's like so many, like if you could, I feel like you could not have read any of the series and read this chapter and you'd understand that she has been possessed.
Right.
Like she's hearing the sound effects, like there's a mention of the god, and then explicitly the next thing, you know, like she says Sphinx's name, and then the next thing that happens is that she's screaming. Like there's a lot of like sentence to sentence, I feel like, correspondence with this, and maybe I think that's because the god we're with is Sphinx, and Sphinx is not subtle.
Right. Yeah, she has this whole like, yeah, she calls upon Sphinx and then has like a vision of battle.
Yeah, and I think that this is a thing that it's like, it's convenient narratively for him now to be rewarding us and being clear and having this kind of like sort of triumphant clarity that sort of matches the triumphant clarity of the people in the scene. But also I think it completely tracks as a statement about the gods, in that like when you're possessed by the god of war, there's not any of the kind of mystery or subtlety. Like it's, you know it, everyone knows it, that god does not tiptoe.
Word.
But she's totally ISIS. I mean, this is absolutely like a
Talking about the goddess ISIS, or you talking about the organization?
I'm talking about this terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Like she is, like the stuff she says is incredible. I don't think there's anything I can compare it to, but like, you know, like Islamic State rhetoric.
I guess she is. Yeah,
Right.
all of the visions or all of the like scrying that she does is like, there's going to be battle. It's going to like a lot of like shit is going to go down, but we're going to win.
Yeah, and we're going to take this sword and we might die, but you know what? We're glad to die because, yeah, like I feel like I may have underlined some of these that are just like,
It's not even we might die. It's like death is now. We go to
yeah.
death.
Yeah, there's that one little bit that's just so like, what? And people cheer. People are screaming and cheering for it.
I think that's kind of like the first thing she says. Like
Yeah.
right at the beginning.
Oh, and yeah, when she grabs that sword, for the price is death. Not death 30 or 40 years from now, but death now, death today. These things say, I will not cower to you. I am no slave, no ox to be led to the butcher. Wrong me, wrong the gods, and you die. For I fear not death or you. The roar of the crowd seemed to shake the street. And that's not our culture. That's like I feel like that is, as much as crowds love war and get whipped up in our country, that's not the way it goes down here.
So I do think that there is an element of this country that has that rhetoric, if not that exact feeling. I think about my father joining the military in the 60s to fight the Vietnam War. I think that there are places, and not here, but there are definitely places where people at least buy into saying, I'm willing to die for my country. And they get real upset.
Did your father
can't say that?
Did your father enlist or was he drafted?
He enlisted.
Wow.
My father was a poor person in the middle of Texas with no hope. My father didn't even have designs to go to college, and his most vague idea about what he could do for a living was private detective. So he joined the military because he could give his life to his country, and that would make him the man that he needed to be. He would know how to be a man, So I just, and it was important to him that he joined the military.
that he put, everybody puts their life on their line for their country.
Were there crowds of people in the Vietnam era who were cheering for the idea of going to die in Vietnam, though? I feel like this is the difference between one man's idealism and a cultural movement.
That's true. I mean, the culture was not really in favor of Vietnam.
I think there was a ways into it, though. I don't.
But also, even if it was then, it's certainly not now.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that it's not now, and so we see it as not then. I think that we're excited about the element of the country that was not into the Vietnam War, and we act like that's what the country was like.
Were there
not
rallies?
What the country was like. Huh?
Were there rallies?
No, because
though?
people who have rallies are the people who are against the Vietnam War. But most people agree, and this is why I said, if not the sentiment, the lip service. Most people would say you should give your life for your country, whether or not they were willing to do it. And actually, those rallies are a lot more like what Vintage do. It doesn't matter that nothing in the world supports the idea that we should be doing this. We're going to occupy this student union.
So, Ryan, I think your point is really interesting, and I had the same thought. Thank you for bringing it up, because when I read this 2 months ago, I reread it this morning, but when I read it 2 months ago, I recall thinking exactly what you were saying, and I remember thinking at that time, oh wait, when was this book published again? I guess in the mid 90s. And then if it's being published in the mid 90s, it's being written in the early 90s ish, presumably. And so that got me thinking a lot about my own childhood and where I was at that time. And I think that's right around Desert. What was it? What were the Desert Storm?
Desert Storm.
92.
Gulf War.
The Gulf War, and terrorism, or like Middle Eastern kind of like fundamentalism and terrorism was, quote unquote terrorism was an issue throughout the 1980s as well, and was kind of fascination of a lot of storytelling. And I feel like WOLFE is definitely tapping into that here, and in my opinion, an element threading through this book is how those movements manifest, and I do feel like that's a theme here, is like looking at how fundamentalism and revolts, I guess, occur. Yeah.
It makes me think of two other things, pieces of art that I really like that aren't, I feel like they're only vaguely related thematically and not related any other way. One of them is John from Cincinnati, David Milch's show that lasted for one season. That was his response to the jingoism that followed 9/11. And then, what is the other, fuck me. There's another thing that's in the same zone of like really erudite dudes thinking about, Houellebecq, the French author. A reoccurring theme in his novels is that Islam will definitely take over the world because its adherents really truly believe that they should, and that they're fine to die in the process, and that there's absolutely nothing that can combat that in the West, and we continue to pick a fight with them, then it's impossible to win if we're not willing to die, and they are.
What it made me think of is actually a Talking Head song, a really good Talking Head song called "The Wind in My Heart" on "Remain in Light." Is anyone familiar with that one?
Yeah.
It's really cool, and it's all from the perspective of like a very young man, maybe even a boy, who's about to go into like some kind of militarized zone with a bomb, basically, and it's just like completely from his point of view. It's actually, I'm getting like a little emotional thinking about it, and I don't know, it just like shows it from his perspective, like.
That's really interesting. When did Remain in Light come out?
83.
80. Okay,
I want to say
1980.
like 83, 84.
It's 1980.
80. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is because there's a Kate Bush song on The Dreaming, which is from 1982. That is an incredible song about a dude in Vietnam with a grenade deciding that he's he's probably gonna have to kill himself right now.
I love that record so much.
Oh, that record is out of control.
It's a good time for music.
I gotta listen to that one. I gotta check that out. But
The Dreaming is so sick.
It's really good.
Yeah, The Dreaming rules.
That down.
But yeah, I did not realize I like Remain in Light, but I've never really tuned into the lyrics that hard, and I didn't realize that they did that same thing before.
That slows down over like, so it starts off like really like funky and cool, and then by the end it's just like really like just super slow and like, I don't know, more hypnotic and a little bit more somber. Anyway, that's a cool song. But the point, I guess, overall is just like looking at these sort of things from another point of view, besides an American point of view, I guess. And I do get that sense that Wolf is exploring like this movement from that point of view.
It's so interesting to me because I definitely specifically felt like this is on a very American, like the ideal of like what people feel like America is supposed to be like, and what we are like. I felt like that's where this was coming from.
Well, it makes sense that I don't see why it can't be both. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not.
It makes sense that like you would. I mean, you have to like, if you want to demonize someone, you have to be able to like relate to the thing that you're demonizing in them or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, this is like just a tiny little thing that's not, but I circled something because I just like specifically for Jordan, because this thing about the language of flowers, because every time, remember there was a while where every time a flower would come up, Jordan would be like, ah. So I just circled this.
Wait, what page is it on?
45. It's Mint is talking about rose, the meaning or the rose or whatever.
Isn't that a French thing? The language of flowers, isn't that? I thought that was the thing that we had in our world.
The Victorians were like,
yeah, they're really into that.
A posy beans or whatever.
I didn't have anything to say about it. I just circled it for Jordan.
Oh yeah.
A little detail that I circled that's not for anyone in particular, but was kind of interesting, was when they're sacrificing, I think it's the goat, and they painted the hood. And
to be gold?
Yeah. And that got me thinking a lot about this whole morning. I was thinking about augury and sacrifice. And so I Googled it to read a little bit more. And one of the first results that popped up talked about a performance artist who is one of the big, like, kind of doing crazy stuff in the 60s kind of performance artists, you know, like the people who would put themselves into a room with a wolf or whatever. You probably know more about this stuff than me. And one of those guys is this guy who always does these ritualistic sacrifices. And he still does them. He's an old man now, but he like will sacrifice animals, like dress himself up in a robe and like put on music and like gather a crowd and like slit an animal's throat, and then he'll do stuff with the blood afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's really controversial, which I guess is,
I imagine, yeah,
how you make performance art. You know,
I never realized until just recently that in Apocalypse Now, when they cut the head off that cow, they do it by just letting a bunch of villagers cut a head off a cow while they film it.
Yeah,
and not stopping them.
Oh, so I would like whatever that performance art is not a sacrifice, because sacrifice is sacrifice, and that person isn't sacrificing anything. They're like obtaining animals to kill them. And the sacrifice is that you're giving away something you could have used or that is important to you. He's getting from it. He's getting attention. That's just like, it's totally meaningless.
His sacrifice as a career is a really bizarre concept.
There was a man in college whose father, who was some hoity-toity famous art person, went to some New York City party in the 70s that had a performance piece where everybody, when they came into the party, got a baseball bat and they hit this sack that was hanging from the ceiling. And then after everybody had arrived, it was revealed that that sack was full of dead puppies. And then everybody had hit this sack full of dead puppies as they came in. And the sacrifice was everybody's ethics.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Intense.
I like that one.
Yeah, nobody was happy about that piece. Because they weren't sure if the dogs were alive or dead when they were hitting the sack.
Incredible.
Yeah.
There's the bar. You got to clear that. Now that I've heard that story, I'm going to be a lot harsher with performance art.
Oh, good.
Gross.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Did they open the sack? Were they like, you all hit the sack, huh? Ooh,
I believe that's what happened.
wow.
Yeah.
Just like at a podium, like, and I would like to announce that there were dead puppies in the sack. 17 dead puppies.
The man who said this is a notorious liar. But the story still stands.
Story's good. It's a good story.
Yeah.
And now that it's on this podcast, it could be cited. I mean, whatever the fuck, this is not a podcast, but it could be cited on Wikipedia with a link to this video, and then it's true.
G. Lucas Crane, non-horse. This happened to non-horse. If you want to put it on the Wikipedia.
Frequent collaborator with Rick Royer, right? Is that what
That's
I heard
correct.
Okay.
Frequent collaborator with Rick Royer.
I remember. I've heard that name somewhere.
Yeah.
But this, okay.
Also, ex boyfriend of Dina Kelberman.
Oh,
Yeah.
quite a pedigree.
I forgot about that. I totally forgot that.
Huh?
You forgot about Dina?
I just forgot that. Yeah, I forgot that Dina did.
Yeah.
So am I wrong in saying that this chapter, the sacrificing, is so much more revolting? Like, I feel like when I've encountered it before up to this point, it seems kind of quaint and sort of like, oh, look at this old-timey tradition. It's kind of gross, but like, it's this sweet little man does this, and this is how they worship. And then in this chapter, presided over by the god of war, the goddess of war, it's just purely revolting. Every time he mentions the animals, they're terrified. They've been literally, there's that line about the goat being betrayed by every human.
Like, this must be a matter of this story wait, Mint is the one who's doing, I didn't reread the chapter. It's Mint doing the
Yeah.
so it might just be because she
marveled at them a little bit.
and was like, oh, and they were, because she's not supposed to do the sacrifice, I think. So she's like, oh man, and like the fucking sad little horse came up, and then I had to cut his throat, and there's all this viscera. It was so, like that might be a reflection of that.
yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that's it's portrayed as like revolting, like, because Mint is actually she's actually like really hesitant to do all this.
And Silk, it's like he was trained to do it. That's what he went to school for. That's like,
I mean, I think that Mint has some training. Sybils are supposed to step up when the augur can't do it, but she never has done it.
yeah.
She's uncomfortable for sure.
Oh yeah, it's not that she's not allowed. It's just that she doesn't come across a moment to do it.
Yeah, she really wants to trade off, but it just like doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I also kind of felt like maybe that if he's giving us an effect of setting Silk now apart from the religion. Like before with the sacrifice, we saw it with Silk and was connected completely with him. And now he's not even present in the building, and it feels different, and I kind of feel like that's a deliberate effect too. That like Silk, like like this conflict isn't actually between like the people that are all there feel that the conflict is the religious good people versus the corrupt government, and that to them is the whole battle here. But for us reading it, I feel like now we're seeing that it's not like that at all, that Silk is actually apart from both of these groups, because this like warmongering and the murdering and stuff, it's all so Old Testament that it contrasts with Silk and his way of thought and his mission like really starkly.
Well, you don't want the war hero. Like, there's a reason that Mince is the war hero and not Silk. And it's because Silk's the Calde. He's supposed to be the guy who is nice, that we trust. Like, he's not doing something else. He has nothing to do with what's going on right now, I think.
Yeah, Churchill didn't get to be prime minister again after World War II.
Yeah.
They got rid of him. He wasn't that kind of a leader. He was a war leader.
Like, yeah, you want all the blood on Mint's hands.
What keeps happening to Tim? Can we talk about Tim?
I think
He's got a spotty connection.
yeah, his internet is bad.
I'm just worried for him.
He's okay. There he is.
There he is.
Tim Connor's worried about you.
I'm back.
Good.
Thank you for your concern. I was switching. My phone is running out, so.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Connor said we needed to talk about you, that he was worried about you.
I
Kind of an
wanted-
intervention.
I just wanted to acknowledge what was happening and, make sure that it wasn't just in my head.
Absolutely. What if a plane just crashed onto my house? I mean,
I've seen
know.
Donnie Darko.
yeah.
He would have
if
heard
anything-
that.
I've seen Southland Tales. These things happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this kind of relates back to ideas about, or Gene Wolfe's interest in governance and society, right? Like, if you think back to New Sun and the conversation between, oh God, I don't have a brain for this. Between his master Malrubius, right,
yeah.
and Severian, and the Equaster Malrubius is asking him questions about governance. This is kind of I feel like this is Wolfe is portraying society breaking down, and he's portraying how it's supposed to all work out, right? Like, it's perfectly constructed. It's going to work out. It's great. But it doesn't, the societies have a way of like going awry. And that's, we're seeing different sides of that. We're seeing the Amontillado, and we're seeing this religious fervor, and we're seeing the confusion, the bureaucracy, the military.
Oligarchs.
It's just a big mess. Yeah, but it's all disorder. I think Wolfe
And
would
all of it is
prescribe
pointless.
order that would work.
Yeah,
Like, none of it matters at all.
because global warming is happening.
Right, because
Right
the world
now.
is fucking ending.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, there's something way more real than all of the. In a way, all of this society is fake.
yeah.
Like, it was constructed by Typhon. It exists in a glass jar that is about to crack open, and all of it will be pointless.
Exactly. And that's why the world is a brilliant metaphor, is because it's all, we're like reading it. It's like, oh, it's a generation ship. Like, all these things were just built as like a, just to house these people. But that's exactly more or less
What happened on Earth?
Yeah.
Earth is a generation ship.
It's really interesting too. Why is the god of war even there? It's Mint calls Sphinx so that she can speak loud enough to address a crowd she has to deal with. Like Mint's entry into this is so interesting because she's not seeking war. She's not seeking the ability to fight, but that's what she gets because she's called the god of war.
The power flows through her.
Yeah, and it's almost
I'm also curious, like, I mean, definitely the gods do have these associations. They admit, Kypris talks about each of them divvying them up. But what is that? Sphinx is the god of war? What does that mean to the character of Spijix? You know, is this question? This is a weird question to ask. I don't know if it's clear what I'm asking.
It seems like, and please let me know if this isn't how you interpret it, but it seems like the associations that each of the gods have were sort of arbitrarily prescribed early on just to have this idea of a mythology for the people of the world. But so like it's like, oh yeah, physics can be war, you know, Scylla could be the sea, and Kypris is love, you know, like based on their personalities. But that actually literally, in a way, took on significance, even though it began sort of arbitrarily. They became true gods in a sense, you know.
But I'm wondering if that happened to Spijix.
Well, like,
Spijix
was probably like 6 years old when she picked. You know what I mean? She was like a kid, so she was probably just like the cranky one. Like in Short Sun, they have Scylla, and she's like, well, my mom never liked to swim, so I picked the water so she would stay away from me. Like,
yeah.
Like, and she liked to dive. Like, she's just like, well, I've played in the water, so I'm a water girl. WOLFE was like, you know what I mean? Like, she liked to dance, so she is art. Like, you know, it was just like, oh yeah, we just need a thing. Kypris, that's like dad's poor lady, like, let's go for it. That's the
I feel like I know where you're going, Connor, and I hate it.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I feel like you're inching towards this thing of like, well, the gods aren't really defined archetypes. But
if somebody's saying that, you're saying that, I'm asking what being the god of war is like for the electronic construct that is Spijix, which was once a human being.
My feeling, though, is that we go back further than the human being. That, like, the way that the two of you are talking right now is like, so this little kid came, this little kid decided this thing. It's all just kind of like, there's no meaning to it.
There was once a little kid.
So it takes
but there's
so like
stuff.
I want to know what happened to the kid.
There's stuff
I want to know what it's like.
The kid.
I'm sure there is. That's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about what it's like for the kid.
Yeah, and I think that's missing the point of
and
God.
You don't care.
Wait, everybody stop.
Because that's a literalist. It's like the most literalist possible way to talk about the God. And
which is one of the ways we can talk about it.
Yeah, and it's the way that I feel like that WOLFE is.
I guess I'll talk about it in my other Gene Wolfe group.
No, I'm not against talking about it, but I feel like it.
Let us talk about it.
I am letting you talk about it, but I'm also going to speak for Gene here because I feel like Gene has another thing to say.
Then you can talk about it after we're done talking about our thing.
Sure. All right. Fine.
So okay, this is the experience of a god right now in the book we're reading. Like this moment is that you possess somebody, or you can like watch people. When you go into their brain, you take part of them and they take part of you. So I am a worshiper of Spijix. I'm not going to pick that one because I don't like to say it. A worshiper of Scylla. And I'm like, have this vision of Scylla as being this like haughty water goddess. And she possesses me to like run an errand or whatever. And she takes with her my image of Scylla and it becomes part of Scylla. She goes back to the main Scylla and it becomes integrated.
Yeah, well, the other
So
thing
really just becoming a different person. It's not the original girl anymore.
Right.
But the original
and
exists somewhere.
It's 300 years of that.
Right.
So like you become the archetype.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like whether you were or not at the beginning.
Well, and to a degree, you become the archetype as soon as you're
And you take on
the entity isn't housed in an organic brain and is put on.
Yeah, but I'm just
computer.
saying. But I'm saying.
And there's also
it's only
the
more so
mythology.
for over 300 years.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Like,
and part of this
they all average out to the archetype.
is the mythology from Earth that, you know, okay, Echidna has like the wife energy. She literally is the wife, but now she's incorporated when they make the Echidna program in the very beginning, while they're still on Earth or whatever. It integrates in and creates Echidna based on the mythological ideas of what the mother means or what they need it to mean here. And it melds with the mean mom's personality and whoever she is, and it becomes like a slightly new different thing. And then she goes into Rose and, you know, and so forth.
Yeah, that the process of creating a god is a process that goes back and forth between people, right? People and the gods themselves, and also the world around the people, that creates those archetypes that I think Ryan is maybe referring to. So the gods are sort of expressions of archetypes, and that's
kind of what happens now. That's kind of the experience of being a god, whatever that is.
A celebrity. It's an experience.
Oh, yeah.
It's the experience of being a celebrity now. That's why we have to end
That's how the gods
celebrity.
are anime characters.
That's a really relevant topic, Connor, because celebrities must be molded by their output, right? Like, not only in the sense, like, think of like I watched the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode recently where Jason Alexander is talking about, like, man, everyone just sees me as George. But that's not even exactly what I'm talking about. You know, like, it's more like, I don't know, like the more you put those characters out there, even like different characters, like that has to like feed back into your understanding of yourself. You know, like,
well, it makes me think of what's her name, Joan Rivers, in the Joan Rivers documentary, when she's talking about, I want to make this joke. In my day, we had Jackie O. Now we have Blackie O.
You love this.
Michelle
You love
Obama.
talking about this Joan Rivers.
I think that this is a significant thing in our culture. And she was saying she can't make that joke because hundreds of people depend on her to go to college. Because she's a goddess, and there was a body of people who worshipped her, and that's how they were able to survive.
Right.
I think that this is a similar process here to celebrity, that a celebrity is an entity that collects around a human being and kills it and then continues living on in its name. And that's why we got to save all the celebrities from their celebrity.
Well, celebrities are also like formed by audiences and like observers, you know,
exactly.
Like, so that's like a similar like give and take, like
that's happening fully with Mint here too. Like this moment, the crowd has done this to Mint as much as anything else has.
And it's interesting because she dives into it. Everybody's trying to do it to Silk. It's trying to happen to Silk, and Silk struggles against it in this weird way, or appears to, according to Horn, to struggle against it in this interesting way. And I think that in the phase of my life where I was like, Silk is the best leader, part of it is because he doesn't buy into the celebrity of leadership at all, that I was so attracted to that story, you know.
There's very funny illustrations of that at the end of this chapter. He's like a barrel of laughs when he gets back after being tortured.
Yeah.
And in his like continual rejection, like casual, very autistic feeling to me, rejection of celebrity at the end when he's like going to get washed up and like passing by everyone. But we're not there yet.
Has anybody here read An Evil Guest? It's Gene Wolfe's H.P. Lovecraft's retelling of Call of Cthulhu.
No.
Because it all centers around this singing woman, a famous singer woman, and it again kind of seems to be talking about Cthulhu is celebrity, which I think is also in the original Lovecraft, that he says the gods become thoughts that fall between the stars and then manifest as the dreams of artists and madmen. Yeah, evil gods are celebrity.
I think that the original Little Girl Sphinx is exactly the amount of possessed as Mint is.
Oh, I think she's more possessed than Mint, almost.
Okay. But the thing that possesses her precedes her.
I feel, yeah.
The little girl is not the origin of Sphinx. Sphinx, yeah, she's an avenue for it. She's like a vessel for it, but not the origin of it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's saying anything different than that.
I hear a lot of just a little girl, this little girl, the specifics. Let's think about this little girl. The little girl.
I know, but I think that you hear that because I want to talk about the little girl and you don't.
No, I'm fine with talking about the little girl, but she doesn't give us answers about the god. Like her, like figuring out her life doesn't.
And I
tell
think
us
that's a
about
mistake. I think that thinking about the little girl can give answers about the god.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes both ways. I think there's no reason to. I don't really understand the argument.
I just like feel so like scared when things start to move into like a historical interpretation of myth territory, where it's like, well, the reason that this god has 4 arms is because this politician had 4 arms. Like when we go towards that.
Right? I think that you should stop being afraid of talking about that.
It goes both ways. Both ways. Like the human conception of things.
It's just a lens of analysis. That's all. It's not.
I mean, part of what's so interesting about these books to me is that he does have these discussions about vague, abstract philosophies and whatnot. And then when he takes them back down to, but here's a sci-fi hard realist, that there is no magic here. Like, I can tell you the mechanics of every single thing that's happened. And that justification of it is part of what's so interesting about these books to me, to like take the trope up to its most abstract, meaningful thing, and then bring it back down to, and here is the Asimovian kind of like hard sci-fi reality of it. Like, that's half of the fun.
And I think that there's, in other wolf scholarship, there's this feeling of like a triumphant vindication of materialism in being like, look, he's explained mystical shit through a way that actually makes sense.
And I think that anytime you're afraid of me talking about materialism, just remember who I am and how I live.
Yeah,
right. You're the stand-in right now for Aramini. Is what you're my straw Aramini right now. Is like I'm really talking to the other wolf scholarship that thinks that there's a vindication of materialism in wolf.
Well, that makes me feel uncomfortable.
You can completely disagree with me, absolutely, every single thing I say, and think it's completely wrong. But you have to let me say it before you start talking about why I'm wrong.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I get a little worked up because I feel there's a lot of speaking for the reduction perspective, where I feel very strongly that
these books are alchemical.
At the end of the day, isn't that like the whole point of why our group exists, is to like be a counter to that?
I'm not trying to silence.
You don't have to worry about it.
I'm not trying
and
to.
These books are alchemical. It's got to be a process of sublimating and then reducing it. Like, we got to do both over and over and over again until our souls are pure.
Okay, so yeah, to that, speaking to that, let me do my thing, which is to bubble up the when things get really congealed. That's just, I get bubbly. I start heating it up.
It's bubbly.
I mean, that's cool.
But you don't think in general that like humans and gods like co-create each other back and forth in the cycle?
I think that there is a lot more, that we have a lot less to do with the origin of the patterns. Like, I don't think the patterns, I think that we are the material of the patterns.
Well, it's
that,
the way the patterns manifest.
Right, but and I think that there's.
But that's significant, though. But that's not insignificant.
But I feel that I feel a lot of pressure in this culture in which I live to ascribe the patterns to the efforts of men, and I think that the efforts of men are futile against the patterns. Is my feeling, and I feel that the point of view that has the ship Zadkiel traveling through all time is the point of view of people are, we are the dust blown by the patterns. Now we would like to think of ourselves as being more their cause or having ability to change them.
Well, Ryan, anytime you get
the efforts of men are still a manifestation of the patterns, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The efforts
of men. So
it's
all relevant. I mean, it's all relevant then.
Okay.
Right.
Anytime
you're not going to have a kid picking obviously the archetype exists before, because otherwise you can't have a 6-year-old being I'm the god of this or the god of that. The concept exists beforehand.
Yeah. And I believe that's why we don't get flashback descriptions of what their lives were like, and we only just get the faintest kind of throw off references about what the gods' actual lives were like, because the gods because the gods are the gods. The gods are, you can get as much about Sphinx from Mint as you can from the original little girl whose name was Sphinx. I'm just hyper. We haven't done this in a long time. I don't hardly talk to anyone except for people at my work. Just let me be hyper, all right? I don't want anyone not to talk.
You have to let as well. This is the letting.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I think
it's if I'm going to say something, you're going to punch me in the nose when I'm going to say it. I'm just going to punch you in the nose back, and then we're going to say our stuff.
All right, so we're punching.
But the weird thing, I don't understand why it's an argument though. I literally
never an argument. Never actually an argument. It's just
no.
It's never really an argument. Is what I think. I'm always cracking up about, because it's everyone. We all fundamentally agree on these things, or we wouldn't even be able to talk about it at all. This happened in my old band all the time. You'd have Dan and Caroline, and they would be saying the same thing, just in a different language, and they're fighting tooth and nail about it. And you have to be a translator in between them. Actually, you guys are saying the same thing.
Am I the Dan or the Caroline?
I don't think that matters in this story.
There's no.
They're the same person.
It doesn't matter.
Dan and Caroline are doing the same exact thing in the story.
My point is that my point is that you have to we're all critical thinkers in a very similar way, but we have different approaches. Everyone has their own approach, but we're all fundamentally coming at it from the same basic framework. So you don't have to you just don't have to worry about.
There's a shared value.
I'm a nervous
we have shared
man.
values.
I'm
That's
a nervous
why
man that
we've
I'm afraid
been
I'm excited.
Is that we have shared values.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
None of us we wouldn't be here if that wasn't true.
I don't.
Just don't be afraid. Be not afraid.
You just have to just don't address. I'm saying you can these feelings that you have are reasonable feelings to have. You just need to address them outward, because it's not. You're not if you're just fighting with yourself if you're fighting into this group.
Yes, it's true.
Like, don't point it at Connor, is all I'm saying. Because it's not, Connor's not the one doing the thing that you're mad about.
Anything that I'm saying, nobody else is saying.
Okay, but
You're right
maybe
about that, too.
maybe it will. I can calm us down by talking about how Elon Musk has to do with this chapter.
Sure. I think.
Bring us home, Ryan. Take us home, please.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And
I'm
Bezos and
scared.
Zucker. So a thing I'm reading this chapter. There's like so many things that happen here, and I felt like I kept getting ripped it from like a really important thing to really important thing while just the plot is happening. I really love this chapter, and it like doesn't hit me until kind of the middle that we're at a funeral. This is the whole thing is a funeral. Like there's all these things are happening where then I feel like I have to remind myself like, oh yeah, Mint didn't try to have a rally. She didn't try to have anything. She tried to have a loud voice. That's all that she asked for. And then became a war general. And like and then having to remind myself, this is a funeral, and it's a funeral for a robot. And it's a funeral that's partially being presided over by a robot.
She wasn't a robot. She was a human with some robotic parts.
She's in a weird gray area of like.
She's very robot at this
Can
point.
I say something annoying? I think that part of the point of this story is that humans are also robots.
Yeah.
Like this is an extremely transhuman story. This is like fucking Battlestar Galactica level of like if humans made these living things, they're living things, and there's no difference.
Yeah, like Marvel and Rose are more similar than not.
And so this is how I think that Elon and Zuckerberg come into this is that it's actually really, really strange, I feel like, for a sci-fi book written in the present to present just like to give you this impression that if these kind of, something better than human plus technology is better than human in our culture. And
that's what we think.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in the sci-fi readership, I think there's that like kind of just understanding that if you put a computer into a human, that human wouldn't act more like a human from the past. They would act better. And that's not what's happening here. Like the robots here are imitating and taking solace and like clearly have a lot of faith in the kind of beliefs that people had long before computers were even heard of.
There's a lot of ethics that are being written right now about AI, looking at like the Terminator scenario and saying like it's a anthropocentric view to think that when computers become self-aware, they're going to decide that humans need to be taken care of, and that the Matrix is a much better idea of what would happen, where they would just give us what we want and shut us up. It's hubris to think that like, yeah, we're the thing that's standing in the way of the world, and they will have to take care of us. We're nothing.
Yeah,
like, we can be pacified.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird to think about. There's another way of thinking about robots too, and thinking of them more in terms of, okay, bear with me here. Like, we tend to think of them as something that humans invent, and therefore they may reflect the concerns of humanity, right? That would make sense. Technology, in a way, perhaps, reflects humanity.
Yeah.
But there's another way of thinking about it too. Just that, like, okay, there is sort of light and matter in the universe. And when you put those together in a certain configuration, you get like elements, and I'm no scientist here, so feel free to stop me if this doesn't make sense, but you get then like the air comes about, right? And then like rock comes about and water comes about, right? Now from those elements, we get, in one instance at least on the planet Earth, life, right? Organic matter starts popping up. Grass starts popping up, right? And animals and dinosaurs and eventually people. Then there's another layer on top. And that's tools or technology, right? It's actually growing out of the life stuff is this other paradigm.
it's not necessarily an invention, but rather an extension of life.
It's evolution.
In a way.
This is the phenomenon of man. This is what Teilhard de Chardin was talking about. Like, we invent robots like apes invented us.
Well, yeah, right. But it's almost like another consequence of life.
Exactly.
I mean,
which is
evolution,
just a consequence of matter.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't. It's just like another. It's not necessarily an invention of humanity, or it's that life produces this other thing, this other, this other strata of stuff in the universe, and that is
ontological framework.
Machinery, I guess, but I'm not exactly sure. That's just like where we understand it right now. But it's a byproduct of life leads to this other thing that may become much bigger than what we currently understand it as. Right.
It
right
is
now,
to life as life is to material.
Yeah.
Teilhard de Chardin talks about exactly these kind of phases of evolution.
Okay.
And it was as we were going into pandemic that some people at Cornell were publishing a paper on negentropy in subatomic systems and how that produces consciousness. It's very complex. Maybe I shouldn't go into it here, but how like quantum entanglement. So you have a subatomic particle, and its identity is all the possible things that particle could be, but it's all self-contained, and that's why it's able to stay as just a probability wave. As it becomes entangled with other particles, its identity becomes something that includes the other particle's identity. Once other enters into self can only define itself in relationship to other. Therefore, the information of the particle isn't contained in the particle anymore. There's unknown parts of it. The more unknown amount of information is in the particle's identity, it eventually collapses into a material thing. But the senses of that material thing are also quantum entangled, and eventually that collapses into intelligence. When intelligence starts becoming quantum entangled with other intelligences, it collapses into society. Machines are the means by which societies are able to become more than humans are. And that's the process we're talking about. And those are gods. Like, what sphigics is a society participating in sphigics. What Yahweh is the Jews participating in Yahweh.
This was a paper from 2 years ago?
Yeah. I think it might not actually, because of pandemic, not have been published yet.
Wow. That's really uplifting to think that there's scholarship. I had this weird impression that like the Tao of physics had like this huge pushback against it, and that like people were really trying to put a lid on the idea of using quantum theory to like support anything that would seem mystical. And the thing you've just described seems like a real back with a vengeance.
Oh yeah,
quantum stuff.
That's all over the place. It's just that it's all really new, so it hasn't been made into a show on NBC yet. You know,
that's cool as hell.
Yeah.
I remember my mom's brother gave me Tao of physics when I was younger, and he was like he was working. He died of dental malpractice a decade and a half ago, but he was working on this.
Dental malpractice,
yeah.
I hate dentists. I fucking don't trust them at all.
Yeah, well, that one can't practice anymore, but there's a long way to go before we deal with all of them. But yeah, but he was working. He was I guess he had a degree in psychiatry. I think he was a medicine kind of guy. But he was working on this. he was like really determined to do a scholarly paper about why like telekinesis and psychic powers are possible, and was very much interested in like what he could get out of the quantum physics stuff to help his research, and put me up on Dow physics and stuff. And then I remember being really disappointed a couple years later, reading that there was like tons of criticism, like the Wikipedia entry, you know, is one of those ones where people have come in afterwards and been like, no. We're going to make the refutation paragraphs longer than the rest of the article, kind of style people were up in there.
Well,
Man.
I remember when I worked
what you're into.
when I worked in the science lab with Stu. I remember one of the most depressed days I've ever had in my life was when I realized that none of those scientists believed in many worlds at all. They were just like, no, that's absurd. And I was like, oh no, science doesn't believe in this science that is really important to my work. And I was sad for years and years and years. And then I recently watched a thing on PBS of all places, where it was a group of scientists, physicists, that mostly think that we all accept that many worlds hypothesis is the thing that we all believe in. And I realized that the problem was that the scientists I were talking to about many worlds were biologists. You know, like it wasn't their discipline and they stay in their lane.
Yeah.
Scientists. So you can only hear about the wild science that's being done if you can find a wild scientist.
And scientists now have to be so insanely specialized. It kind of makes sense that if you're just a little bit out of the field, then you have the same ideas about it that just regular people have.
Yet science is fantastically hamstrung. Like it could be, because you have to be able to monetize whatever you're finding out. Like negative results from your hypothesis mean you lose your funding and you don't get to find out. I had to write an article on Ouija boards recently, and I found out that they had been doing this interesting research into why what is going on in a Ouija board, and they found out that Ouija boards are picking up, like, our hands have weird tremors. They have slight tremors, and that the Ouija board amplifies that. And they figured that out because they were making people do Ouija board with a robot. And they found out that they could ask people questions, like simple yes or no questions, and that they did better on the questionnaires when they were answering with the Ouija board than when they were just trying to remember what they know, and that the Ouija board can unlock what you already know. And then people were like, how can we make money off of this? And they're not allowed to do any more research into it. Because it's interesting, but where's the money?
I will say this. We, at the very end of tour, we had like a few days where we were just kind of like fucking around in the Bay Area. And one of the things we did one night, we went, Meredith used to be a neuroscientist. Like, that's how she ended up in this country, is she moved here after, like, as a postdoc or whatever. And she got hired at this lab at NIH. And we went and like stayed one night with her old boss, the dude who like ran that lab that she worked at. And my mind was kind of like blown because they were going into like reminiscing about all this stuff in the lab. And he had a really successful lab, but he was like talking about how the way that he ran his lab was that he brought people on. He was like, I had 3 criteria. I'm trying to remember what he said. He said I had 3 criteria for if I was going to bring someone on or not. You had to be smart. You had to be not an asshole, was one of his things.
That's hard to get both of those.
I forget what the third one was like. Oh, and you have to be motivated. He's like, anything else I could teach someone to do, but like you can't teach those 3 things. But so he wound up with this insane, and they're doing neuroscience, but he wound up with this like every round of people he would bring in would be like this insane eclectic mix of people that were from like all kinds of different disciplines. And it was just kind of like insane to listen to them talking about it, because it seemed like the way he was talking, the way they were talking about it was like, oh, this seems like the ideal thing you would want in a science environment, where you have like a bunch of different people who think about things in a totally different way and have totally different skill sets, and they're coming to especially something like about the brain or something. It's like you're coming at it from all these different angles. And I was just kind of like, I couldn't really believe that I was hearing it and that it was true, because it just seems like the absolute opposite of what normally happens in academia in general and in science in particular. Oh. And I was just like, I can't believe they let you do that. Like, I was just like, I can't believe you were allowed to run a lab this way. And he was like, well, I got results. Because people were doing like really high quality work, because it's like that thing where with the workplace where it's like, oh, it's funny actually when you pay people more and like treat them like human beings and give them a certain amount of autonomy, they actually, and like don't keep a boot on their neck, they actually like are more productive, and like you'll have a more profitable company or whatever. But it's so antithetical. It's just, you never meet someone who's in a position of power who has that kind of thinking about things. Because usually someone in that guy's position is going to be like threatened by anyone who thinks differently from them.
Well, I do.
Just trying to get as much diversity of thought in the lab as he could.
I do want to say that my experience at Stu's lab was that the word interdisciplinary is well regarded. They love to talk about the interdisciplinary things they're doing, but they're not doing interdisciplinary things. It happens a bit because the idea of it is something that they love, but the system is such that as it's happening, the system can take apart that it's been happening.
I guess what I'm saying is it seemed like it was actually happening in this one instance. It seemed like, and
it very well may. Yeah, I'm not saying that there isn't.
Even within the greater institution he was working in, it sounded like an anomaly. Like just this one little lab.
Yeah.
That's run in this way.
But everybody wants to think that they're doing that. Like that is a thing that science likes to think that they're doing. Mm-hmm. That's the fantasy, that like we're able to get all these eclectic people together and harmonize our thoughts into coming, like everybody wants that. It's very rare that somebody is doing that, but they all say that they're doing it.
That's what I'm expressing, because even he was talking about like the other labs and stuff, and like the way people run them, and how people just kind of like bring people on basically to be like technicians. Mm-hmm. And they maybe like bring them on paper because they have like these varying skills or whatever. But at the end of the day, when they get there, they're just like, this is what, they're just kind of like giving orders or whatever. And people don't really have actual autonomy.
Yeah. I think that it's like a lot of like, I want to hire amazing people who are going to think outside the box and bring in new ideas. And I want to break them down so they stop doing that.
Exactly. That's like exactly why I was so shocked to listen to them all talking about it in this way.
I think something that happens also is that when that experience is so common in any work of, your autonomy being shut down and you kind of just having to fill a role, essentially, that when you enter a workplace that isn't like that, there's a weird adjustment period. I know that like when I got to my current job, there's probably like 5 months. And part of this is like because it was at the beginning of the pandemic and I was learning how to do my job, but also from home, which nobody had ever done before. But I was really concerned about doing the job right and like making sure that I was like crossing all my T's and dotting my I's. And then after a while, I realized that they had hired me because I'm smart and know what I'm doing. And so I just started doing what I thought I should be doing. And it turned out that was right. And so but there's a hangover element as well. So and I guess I don't know how these research labs work, but how it might work in some cases, you bring somebody in and 6 months in, they're still kind of finding their feet and not really confident in what they're doing. And then I don't know, it takes time. It just takes time for those kinds of workplaces to develop and for the people to develop in them.
Well, but my read on it was too, though, that the reason that lab was so strong and that it could function in this way is that the dude, her old boss, the guy running the lab, and I watched this guy for the course of an entire evening, and I was skeptical when I first met him, but I really feel like he really convinced me, or I was convinced by the end that he actually had a set of values that was actually operating under them, instead of just like what Connor is talking about, and what most people do, where they say a certain set of values and then behave in a completely different way. And I was it was just I don't know, it was felt really weird to me, because I'm listening to Meredith talk about the experience too. It was just he would go to bat for people and try to defend their rights to do whatever kind of all the people he would bring in would have different fields they wanted to deal in, and different research that they were trying to personally do, and he would basically do whatever. He would use the power that he had to go into these different avenues and carve out space for people to be able to do their own work.
Very rare thing to do.
I know, it was shocking. I was this is why I'm bringing it up, because the whole thing was very shocking, because it just seems I literally asked him basically how were you allowed to do that? It just seems like something that you wouldn't be allowed to do.
But even if you can get a lab that inside of the lab things are good. You said that he's allowed to do that because he produces results.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of work that is important that doesn't produce what a commercial capitalist culture can consider as result. I'm really into this YouTube channel called Numberphile, which is just about numbers. And I'm interested in how many times they talk about, and here's this number, it's this kind of a number. We don't know anything about them. We know that they're useful in some way, but we have no concept of how they could be useful. And we don't know how we ever will, because who would research why this number that includes all possible numbers in it, what that is, why it exists, and what we can do about it? We don't already know, so how are we ever going to figure out? Because we don't know what value it could have to us yet. And we'll never know, because we won't figure it out.
Well,
my understanding of what he meant when he said, I don't even know if he ever used the word results, but my understanding was that the meaning of that was good scholarship, good papers and good scholarship.
Totally. But there is value outside of good scholarship,
there's value in bad scholarship.
Well, there's value in negative results, and that's what science is hamstrung by right now. If you do something and you figure out that doesn't work, now we know that doesn't work. You can't sell that to Raytheon.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose your funding, and we won't be able to find out more of what doesn't work.
I say all this as I'm definitely not trying to refute what you're saying.
I don't think you are.
I feel the same way.
You're doing the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a magical thing when it works the way that
obviously
it should and needs to.
Yeah,
and what's so frustrating? It's they all agree,
psychotic, shocking anomaly.
Yeah,
and they all agree that's the magical thing that we want, and they all act like they're working for that. and most of them are destroying it. Like every step they take down the yellow brick road, they pull up the bricks behind them.
And that is the
Yeah, I mean,
definition
it's the
of a
same thing as,
systemic
like-
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter
It's
who
the
sits at
same
the
thing as,
table.
like-
It's the table's the fucking problem.
It's the same thing as like academic philosophy or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's
It's
a
just like
situation
about
in-
egos and what you can, either if you're trying to, ostensibly the idea of going into studying philosophy is that you are trying to like hash out new models of like how things work or whatever, but the reality is that the best you can do in that scenario is like have someone kind of like co-opt your work and make it serve their work or whatever.
It kind of makes me think about jazz, where like jazz is this thing that is a reaction against prescriptive music theory. You know, it is literally play anything. And now it really only exists in academic conservatories.
Oh yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, fucking, like High Zero.
Yeah.
Wait, please go on with that.
Oh, it's supposed to be.
Oh no, High Zero. I want to hear specifically. I want to relate this to High Zero.
Well, I mean, experimental music. It's like you make this kind of like weird academy out of it, and then it's like there's this certain kind of way that you play a saxophone without a mouthpiece on it, and there's like a certain kind of, it's just like it's so boring. It's so formulaic. It's so fucking formulaic.
Master, it becomes absolutely when the rule breaking thing becomes the rule. Now it's masturbation.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
it's just new. It's just a new. Yeah, it's new.
That's an exciting thing to hear someone else articulate.
Oh.
Because I have a ton of respect for all of the people involved with High Zero, but yeah, like it's hard to be entertained by most of the time.
Well, and that's the thing about masturbation. It's entertaining when I'm doing it.
But also, regardless of entertainment value or not, it's not experimental anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very little that's going on there is like new or interesting in the way that it's like billed to be.
Les Miserables is a boring, terrible, ridiculous musical. Having been in it, I know that it's an insane, beautiful, crazy thing that happened. There's no way I could know that if I didn't put it on. Somebody took Victor Hugo's billion-page novel, cut the majority of it out so you can't know what's happening in the story, and then wrote music to it. That's insane. But when you're just a high schooler listening to musicals, it's fucking awful.
Maybe that's Gene's way into the zeitgeist. There's got to be a musical.
Yes. Oh, whoa.
Oh, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Maybe that's
God.
our ultimate
Can
contribution.
you imagine like Dorcas's?
I'm your grandma.
I feel like as soon as you said that,
my God.
I got the like deja vu from the future of like,
What if that's the only way the story can be told is by an opera? Oh shit! Oh shit! Sorry, I got really excited about that idea.
Yeah, well,
So I had fun thinking about Elon trying to read this and being upset about the passage of Mint saying about Rose and her prosthetics. They sustained her life beyond the lives of the children of many she had taught as children, but they could not sustain it indefinitely, nor would she have wished them to. Yesterday they failed at last, and our beloved Sib was freed from the sufferings that old age had brought her and the toil that was her only solace. Like, I just had this feeling of Elon being furious reading that.
Oh yeah, all those technological transhumanists. My big thing against them is that they've forgotten that the point of life is death. That like
they really do truly want to live forever. They're like being explicit about
it. They in their pursuit of immortality and being alive every moment of time, they rob themselves of true immortality, which is departing from time and existing as a concept, which is God.
How can they be
They didn't do enough ayahuasca. They haven't figured it out yet.
Well, sometimes it's not just the doing of the ayahuasca.
I know.
With a Manly P. Hall that says that I can tell you every single secret of Freemasonry and you don't know them.
Ayahuasca doesn't give you shit if you don't earn it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You gotta live a life.
She'll just cut you the fuck off.
I feel like very affected by the two recent stories by our favorites. The story of the kid setting up the Twitter bot that tracks rich people's jets and Elon offering him $5,000 to shut it down. And then the kid
only $5,000?
Yeah, and the kid DM'd back like, maybe add another zero, lol. And then Elon stopped replying to him, which I feel like is a horrible, horrible story that reflects really poorly on Elon. Like, if Elon was the type of person who books will be written about that are good, like that are praising him later, he would have this is clearly the part of the story in which he would have found his new protege and said, kid, you got balls, like, you're gonna come work for me, you can have your 50,000, but you got to do this job for me. Any like good protagonist of a story would have done that, or even just given him 50,000 and been like, start your business, kid, I want to make, if I don't hear about you in a year, I'm going to be very upset. And he didn't do that. He just stopped replying to the kid like, okay, obviously that's going in the book about Elon, and that is a part that people will mention in the review of the book as being a really salient, cool little story. And then then Bezos is having that same moment with the bridge in Holland or whatever.
Oh, I saw about that.
A moment where you're like, Bezos, are you thinking at all about the books that are going to be written about you in 50 years? Are you thinking at all about what a gift you are giving to the authors, to trying to get a country to take apart an old bridge so your big ass yacht can go through? Like, you have your judgment is awful.
And this is an interesting the place where these two personages diverge is that I do think that Elon Musk is thinking about his celebrity and what people are thinking about him, and just failing at it.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos doesn't. Jeff Bezos is powerful because he knows he doesn't need to give a shit.
He's so famous though. It's like you're vulnerable when you're famous in a way that I don't think he understands.
I think that I mean, Jen probably can say more stuff about this than me. I think that Jeff Bezos is famous in a way where he doesn't. Like, he runs away. He's not courting the spotlight like Elon is. Jeff Bezos doesn't only have his fame, he also has the supply chain.
He's been doing these big these big kind of ill-advised press conferences about the space thing, where he's like, all of which end with, like, the takeaway always ends up being like, this one thing Bezos said is so tone deaf that no one can get over it.
Jeff Bezos is not afraid to be absolutely evil. I think that Jeff Bezos, to refer to a book that we haven't all read, is Duke Leto II in his own mind, that he is doing the terrible thing that ruins all of humanity so he can eventually save humanity. He's not afraid to be the bad guy right now.
Yeah, I feel very certain right now, after like the last week of news, that these two guys don't read a lot of biographies of historical figures. That they're like running their lives.
I doubt they read at all. They read at all.
They read tweets.
Yeah, it might.
Yeah, they don't read books.
It's crazy. It is so. And I'm sure they're surrounded by people who, if they do read it all, would never say something that would question the judgment of their overlord. But holy shit!
I think of Bezos as being a lot less idiosyncratic than Musk. I think of Bezos as being much more like, kind of like a politician, a high-level politician, where you're just kind of a conglomerate, like you're like a president, where you're just kind of a conglomerate of the people around you. Like, I don't really think his personality bears very much on like what he does or like what he's gonna do. I think I think of Bezos as much more of like a conglomerate of people, where Musk is just a fucking like Musk has never actually made anything. I mean, not that Bezos really makes anything, but
he
Musk
makes deals.
like Musk just goes around and like takes other people's ideas, and then says that they're his idea.
I feel like the thing that Bezos makes is audacity.
And he also almost never delivers them.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, the brain implants.
He's just a total showboat. Like Musk is
how often does Jeff Bezos say, "I'm going to do this thing"? Doesn't he just? We find out that he's already done a thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that they're very fundamentally different figures. Like I think Musk's entire thing is his public figure.
Elon wants to be celebrated as a hero and a genius, and
Bezos just wants everything.
Yeah, Bezos.
And he's doing it, and he's fucking doing it. Like, whatever
he really does have some insecurity about his appearance, though. He does, like, he got jacked. He's wearing leather jackets since his divorce. Like, he does have a very pedestrian.
I'm not saying he doesn't care at all about his appearance. I'm just saying that's like all Elon Musk cares about.
Yeah.
And Bezos is like, he kind of reluctantly, it's like he has to, because people love to talk shit about him or whatever. And he's like, he is a figure, but it's like, I don't think he's in it for that.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be on TV.
Musk absolutely is in it for that and nothing else, basically. As far as I can tell. I mean, that's my take.
No, it got bad reviews, but I thought the Don't Look Up movie wasn't terrible.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it got
Quimby!
It got trashed so hard, but I thought it was. I mean, it wasn't a masterpiece or anything. It was pretty good, and it basically one of the main characters is like a synthesis of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. I don't know anyone else. Bill Gates, like any kind of crazy billionaire you can think of.
Funny how Zuckerberg fits into all this because he's such a little wiener that it feels like no matter how much money he'll ever have and how much control over everyone's life he'll always be playing catch up to whoever else is a billionaire. He's a strange little thing in the mix.
Do we not feel that he's on the way out right now?
I mean, he had a very bad week.
Yeah.
What happened?
It's one of those.
Yeah, but I don't think you could ever be all the way on the way out. Like if you're at that point.
If he's still a billionaire, you know.
It is true, but he's got a huge. There was sort of a strange universal acknowledgement that a nobody likes Facebook, and then there was a very palpable financial repercussion to that, and it's going to be tough to get out of. It's going to be really interesting to see. I feel like he's going to be treading water for a while, no matter how much money he has. It's the perception of him is now that he maybe peaked.
I think I think all the metaverse stuff was just really underwhelming.
Yeah,
and that was a big part of it. And so everybody's like, "Well, what else you got? These other guys are going to space." So,
yeah, and he's doubling down really hard on metaverse, but there's like a bad moment occurring where the people that can give him all the money for the metaverse just want to see better metrics on Facebook, which is impossible. Like Facebook is not, there's no way they can get more people to be on Facebook more. It's just impossible. And so they're losing money like in weird ways. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, they're not even really losing money, but because the way that success is measured in our society is by growth and not by it's how fast your hoard is growing and not by what you already got in your hoard, that like Zuckerberg can be so rich, but is now perceived as a failure by lots of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole way that the stock market works is that your company only gets investors if they perceive the opportunity to make more money. So like, you don't put your money into something for it to just stay the same. You only put your money into something if you're going to get it back. And if you don't see a company growing, then you're not getting that return on your investment, which is a nightmare. That's why we live in an era of like where unfettered growth, even for like a college, like unfettered growth is the only way forward. It's the way that they operate is like, well, we just have to keep getting more students so that we can buy more buildings, so that we can put more students in those buildings.
Yeah. It's so on the face of it insane, and yet
it's a terrible idea. Plan. Like, yeah, it makes no fucking sense, especially because there's a population drop coming. So it's like there won't be more people. I think that's the thing with Facebook too. Is like once you get half of the planet on your system, like you're not necessarily going to be able to get the rest of them.
Yeah,
like you gotta. So it just doesn't.
They had to start giving out free iPads in Africa and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
well, I think it was like the actual user, like the user in last year or like the last quarter, like for the first time, there was a drop in daily users on Facebook, which I think is what triggered a lot of the stock stuff too. Yeah. People are like,
Yep, they're like, what's the next thing? Because this is the old thing, and it's not going to be the new thing again.
I get the sense that there's like political machinations behind, like Ryan, you're talking about how last week you saw like a bunch of news stories, I guess is kind of what I heard, or you kind of felt like the zeitgeist was talking about how Facebook was on its way out, and I just sort of feel like there's an element of that that's manufactured as well. That
this was interesting because
these dynasties come down for various political reasons. Like
they had this was like a weird, like materialized, manifested moment of it because there is definitely like politics and conjecturing going on, but also like Facebook did lose billions of dollars in investment because of the reports of the lower. I guess the two things that was being blamed on was like they did have like a report of diminished logins. People were logging in less for the first time in a report. And the other thing was that Apple has changed their privacy laws, which affects the targeted ads of Facebook sending to iPhones. And so there's been a big drop in like billions of dollars dropped out of the ads of Facebook because they can't target things the way they used to. It's a very weird esoteric problem to lose billions of dollars over it, but it's like it's a number, so it's real to people.
I'm reading about that kid who was tracking Elon Musk's plane or whatever, and the ending is even like worse. Actually,
what does it say?
Well, he DMs him and he offers him $5,000 to take it down, and then he basically counters for $50,000. And then he said, and he's also the kid is like, I love Elon Musk. He's my idol. But he says, any chance to up that to $50,000, it would be great support in college and would possibly allow me to get a car, maybe even a Model 3. And then Musk says he doesn't feel comfortable paying anything. And then he says to Elon Musk, if he doesn't want to pay, he would delete the account in return for an internship at Tesla. And then he blocks him. He won't even give him an internship.
What a dummy. Just a dumb man.
I know, like he's a fucking dumbass.
And now that guy is tracking other billionaires' jets also.
Yeah.
Yeah, he soured him on billionaires. That was a chance to get him on their side.
This makes me think of Escape from Tomorrowland, the movie that a bunch of people filmed in Disney World without Disney World knowing.
Yeah.
And then when Disney found out about it, they had to be like, oh, we support this movie coming out. Because they realized that if they'd stopped it, they just made themselves into the movie. You know, and like Elon doesn't get that.
No, it's so weird how it's funny. I guess these people can be so insulated that like money can buy you ignorance in a way. And that like if he had less money, he might have friends who were able to tell him like, hey, Elon, look at it this way. But he has too much money to have those kind of friends.
But also,
which is what
I think even, it sounds
Ayuntamiento's
like
problem.
to me that even before he had that much money, he still wouldn't have listened to you anyway. Because he's a fucking dumbass. Like he's so
He always had that much money.
Yeah, he's always been very wealthy.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, right?
Well, almost no one has been as wealthy as he is now. Like he has a historical amount of wealth at the present that not even
he started with an inhuman amount of wealth.
He did start, yeah.
From Emerald Mines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's actually very secretive about it. There isn't like full disclosure about his parents. It's hard to come up with all the biographical information. It's not really available on the web.
There's nothing to see.
Truanon did a three-parter on him. It's pretty interesting. The podcast.
Nice.
Pods. Why are they podcasts? What is
because of iPods? iPod.
Oh, really?
The iPod.
Yeah,
it started at the time of the iPod,
which no longer exists, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, there's little kids I've probably never seen one.
Language, baby.
I love that the idea that was that you were supposed to load the podcast onto iTunes, onto your iPod, and then listen to it because there was no like wide connection with an iPod.
Well, and then Apple had a whole like auto downloading, like, you know, they basically worked it out so that they were the distributor. You did it all through iTunes.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Pods.
Should we move into the darkened tunnel?
Is there a pod down there?
Is that a metaphor?
I guess we didn't start till 10:30, so we could take it till 1:30 maybe.
We can go a little bit longer, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry
This
that I
back
slept.
half of the chapter is so fucking cool too.
Yeah, I mean, some shit really goes down in the tunnel.
And I had kind of forgotten about Incus being involved in a occult robot brainwashing group.
Oh, really? Black mechanics.
No, I mean I hadn't thought about it in a while. Partially, I guess, because we haven't met in a while. But it was only when he was working on the soldier that I realized, oh yeah, wait, of course, I know all about this. I know about the black mechanics. But when they first went down in there, I had pleasantly forgotten about that whole business because it's only really mentioned in that one letter, right?
No, well, then he's able to rebuild Hammerstone because of his black mechanics and stuff.
In this chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I feel like there's an odd.
Very and I guess this is because we haven't met in a while, but I felt when I was reading this chapter this morning, I felt my brain was so like tripped out. Like I couldn't remember like where. I mean, at first I actually picked up by accident the other book, and I started reading the second chapter of the first book instead of the third book.
I've done that.
And I was like, oh yeah, we're in the marketplace. He's about to meet Oreb. And then I was like, wait. and then, but it's like, there's something, it's like, I've read them too much. Like, I can't, like, my brain couldn't, like, fix a point on, like, where we were in the story at all. And it was just, like,
non-linear.
Yeah, I'm so fully devolved into it at this point that I just, like, can't. And I was, like, tripping really hard trying to just see, like, wait, what has and hasn't happened at this point? So it's funny when you say that thing about, like, well, he's only really mentioned the black mechanics thing one time. And I'm like, no, but we've all read this, like, 40 times. Like, we know that he's just, like, what are you talking about?
But I think that letter is the only time the black mechanics ever came up.
Over your 40 reads, how many times has this come up?
Right.
That's like where my brain is.
Yeah.
This shit
now. I think it's interesting.
I
think it's interesting that we encounter black mechanics through a character who seems so gay. You know, I think that this is coming out of the time period that this book was written on in like the 1980s, the undergroundness of 1980s gay culture and all the gay culture previous to that, like this, you know, that they're doing this secret underground stuff that they had to have meetings. And it also reminded me a lot about stuff I've read about the Invisible College, and like Newton and them having to meet and vivisect dogs and whatnot.
They're kind of goth, like how goth, like how like classic goth is like a mirror of like Catholic
Totally.
imagery. They're like.
Is anybody watching Righteous Gemstones?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
yeah, a
haven't.
little
Wait,
bit.
don't spoil. I haven't watched any of the second season yet.
Oh,
I'm in the middle of the first season. I just watched
Okay.
an episode where you see all the goth kids dancing for the first time. And and I realized, like,
show.
oh yeah, these Jesus-y people and these goth people are the same people.
What
I
a
gotta
good
say,
show.
I feel very pleased with the second season. I was kind of on the fence about the first season.
Oh, I'm really enjoying the first season.
The second season, I feel like picks it up a whole
I
lot.
like that Divine
I
kid.
watched the first episode of the first season like a long time ago, like whenever, I don't know, a while back. And I remember being like, I don't know if I'm gonna watch this show. Like a lot of times I'll just watch the first episode of a show and then I'll be like, I'm not watching this. And I watched the first episode and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna commit to this. But then when I picked it back up, for some reason I picked it back up like way later. And I got really into it.
Did
You
you
gotta watch
Vice
3
Principals?
episodes of a show.
What, Ryan?
Did you watch Vice Principals?
No, I mean, you guys know me. I don't really watch that many shows. That's why I get excited when
Oh.
you talk about one I know about.
Yeah. Oh no, the second season is of Gemstones. It really kicks it into high gear. I'm very happy that I stuck.
It's
Nice.
funny.
It's funny. It's weird though, because like that crew, Danny McBride and Jody Hill and Gordon Green or whatever, like
Walton Goggins.
and Walton Goggins. Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Partially of what I was upset about with the first season was I felt like there wasn't enough Danny McBride and Walton Goggins, and that they're so good at this one little kind of joke, and that there was hardly any of that joke in the show, and they were so focused on plot and characters and all these things where I was like, everybody can do that. You guys can do this one thing. Let those people be little boys. And I think now they got all their ducks up. They set a whole bunch of stuff up, and now the second season there's like cool plot and a lot of little boy jokes. It's very satisfying.
Boy jokes.
It's coming together. I feel like they did in that first season. They were like writing the guys who write dick jokes were writing a very complicated soap opera for the first time.
Who here's watching Succession?
Oh, I want to. I need
I
to.
love Succession.
It's the same show.
Oh, really?
Really?
Like that family. It's 2 shows about the same exact family.
Wow.
Fail Sons and like.
Patriarchs.
Yeah, like the fucking Walter from Big Lebowski is Brian Cox. The kids fall into the. I couldn't remember his name.
John
John
Goodman.
Goodman.
Right. Yeah.
Dan Connor.
Yeah. Dan Goodman. But yeah, the children fall. The woman, the daughter character, is a cartoon version of Shiv from Succession. It's the same show.
Interesting. The thing that blows my mind about Succession is it was created by one of the guys who created Peep Show.
Well, and isn't it Adam McKay and
It's
Will
also
Ferrell?
Adam McKay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a weird combo.
Yeah.
I would never have
It's
expected.
so funny. It's a comedy. It's
Yeah,
incredibly
Secession is the story when the comedy's in the background,
Yeah.
and Gemstones is where comedy's in the foreground.
So funny. So it's amazing. I
I
love
can't
it.
stop listening to the rap songs from the second season.
The
I
every
might
time
watch
that song
that.
gets in my head, it's like I'll think about it all fucking day.
All the music in Succession is outstanding.
It's beautiful. It's great.
Yeah.
Good show.
And they're all black mechanics.
You guys, look at this. Look at this belly of this cat.
Slap it.
Yeah, there it is.
Little stripe.
I just need you to know that this is what I'm like dealing with over here. Look at these little paws.
But should we become black mechanics too? It seems pretty cool.
Do you think they're taking applications?
Are they Satanists? Is that what's going on? What are these guys? They're not Satanists, but like
They seem like Gnostics to me.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Or like a cultist, yeah.
Do you think that they follow one of the gods? I can't remember their thing.
Oh, I think they're atheists.
Yeah.
I think they can fuck with the robots because they know that the rules of the gods aren't ineffable.
Because they're being blasphemous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why they're not allowed to do it.
They think they know how things work and really work.
Yeah.
And
well, this is where they start seeming like medieval occultists to me, where they're like their whole thing is actually knowing the mind of God. Like their blasphemy, even though they don't believe in God, like their blasphemy is helping them understand the mind of God, which is where science got started, was to know the mind of God. But if you did too good a job of it, they were going to burn you up.
I really like Incus and what's happened with him in just a few appearances. I feel like it's really masterful the way that WOLFE was able to make him this creepy, nasty guy. And then when Ock's making him jump off and then he brings the robot back and he turns out to have this really lucid idea of how to fix the robot and he's kind of proud of it, he's suddenly like a really lovable dude. And then the palace gets blown up and then once he's got Hammerstone, like when he's fixing Hammerstone, he's kind of awesome and like suddenly like, oh, this character's redeemed. But then as soon as he has the power of Hammerstone, he becomes twice as bad as he was before, like when he was just being creepy at the beginning. Now he's got a weapon, he's really horrible.
God, I really hate him.
It's a really fun little ride in this one chapter that you take with Incus. Where I was like, oh, hey, there's something to this guy. Oh no, there's this guy. He's awful. He's holding a gun to Ock and he loves it. He wants Ock to know just how much power he's got, how much he's under his thumb.
That's kind of something that's fun about this book is how they're like anybody, the ethics of it, like good guys aren't all good and bad guys aren't all bad, and the bad guys are necessary to do the good thing, but the thing that the good guys are doing are stopping the thing that needs to happen from happening. Like we look at Incus and thinking about the gay coding thing that villains are gay. Jafar from Aladdin is secretly gay, and that's why he's a villainous person. And it's very easy to impugn the character of Incus because he's a bad guy and he's gay because he's a bad guy and he's a bad guy because he's gay. But then you see, oh no, this is a real person who is bitter about their lot in life, and that's why they seem like a bad guy, but they have a valuable thing that they can do and need to do, but they're still a human being, and they're going to turn around and use that for use it in the way that life has fashioned them to be. It kind of goes back to the idea that like the gods exist before man, but also the gods are filtered through the lens of man. So man created gods just as much as gods created man. Like Incus is a person, so his personhood can manifest in good ways, but he's also a product of the culture, which is forcing him to survive, which makes him do bad things. I don't want to kill this guy. I'm a person and I can feel that this is another person and I don't want to kill him, but I'm starving, so I'm going to kill him and eat him. It's that kind of feeling, Incus doesn't even believe in gods. I don't know.
He worse than doesn't believe in gods because he works for the church while not believing in gods, which is like a whole other level of that's like even a much. It's like not even just not believing in gods; it's pretending you believe when you really don't. It's like
right, which gives him the ability to do things that the gods need him to do.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks that he's going against God. Mm-hmm. In doing that, he's doing what God needs him to do. But that also changes what God is.
I guess this kind of relates into the really neat little thing that he talks about with devils impersonating
I was
gods.
just thinking about that, Ryan.
Yeah, it's a really cool little bit.
Yeah.
My son, if a devil were to personate a goddess, it would become that goddess in a way, or that god, Toss, let us say, or Hyrax. It would run a grave risk of merging into the total god, or so the science of theodaimony teaches us. That is to say, the facts as they are, as far as they can be expressed in purely human terms. It's there averred that devils do not often dare to personate the gods for that very reason, fear of becoming them, while the immortal gods, for their part, never stoop to personating devils. That is a cool, a really weird little piece of theology that makes a lot of sense.
And it makes me think back to the Elon Musk and the little boy with the tweet thing. You know, Elon doesn't get that when somebody opposes you, you absorb them, and that's what a god does. He thinks that when someone opposes you, you block them.
You
But
dunk
that's
on
what a
them. If
human
you can't
does.
dunk on them, you sulk.
Right. That's a human thing. That's not a godlike thing. Gods eat everything. Gods are caterpillars.
Cool.
Caterpillars eat everything. I thought they eat leaves.
I'm just thinking about the children's book, The Hungry Caterpillar. I think about it all the time. Anytime we talk about exponential growth, I think about that book and how it ruined our entire world.
Wow. And they want to ban the giving tree.
Yeah, no, we should ban the Hungry Caterpillar.
Ban children reading. Just
No more.
Well, soon it's all just going to be emojis.
Terrible, yeah.
I was watching the fucking news. I was watching CNN.
Why are you doing that?
Because I want to make sure that I know what CNN is doing. I watch all of the news. I like to. I watch the news and I watch Marvel movies. I want to know what pop culture God is telling us.
Fucking wild what happens on TV, man.
It is.
It's wild what they're doing on TV.
You have to watch the TV
I was
and then
watching
you have to
the
watch
news.
commercials.
I was watching. I don't get to see. My commercials come from a different place. But I was watching CNN and a woman was talking about some billionaire did something horrible on Fox News, and she said, "This is what he said." And then she said that, like, shrug emoji. She said the words shrug emoji in her analysis of the news on CNN. She was paid by CNN to say the words shrug emoji to us.
Unfucking believable.
Because
Jesus
she needed
Christ.
to use an emoji and she was talking and you don't have emojis in talking. So she had to say, it blew my fucking
And she
mind.
knew
I
that
had
her,
to scream.
she knew that her
I don't like
audience
that,
is too dumb to understand a shrug.
Right. She could have shrugged.
Yeah, but that wouldn't have read.
Right.
That's so insane. That's so insane. And it reminds me of this one place where we stayed in California. It was like an Airbnb. And there was a guest book. And we were reading the guest book. And this one person had written this thing. I don't even understand what the fuck it was trying to say. But because a Christian like read it out loud. And it was someone who... It was clearly someone who worked for IKEA and and was just expressing how much they really believe in like the mission of IKEA or something. It was like this insane. Like they worked for like IKEA HR or something, but it was like, you know, it's a book. They're like writing with a pen, and they kept like they put all these like hashtags in there, and it's like hashtag IKEA or something, but it's just like the idea of like writing down a hashtag in a paper thing is so insane to me. It was like, and there were a bunch of them, and it was just like, it's insane to me.
It serves no purpose. I mean, I guess your brain is just so poisoned by that mode of communication that, like, I don't know. I mean, you got to be aware that it's not a clickable link.
on the internet, a hashtag is like an actionable like thing, right? It makes
it does
where it's
something.
a linked thing.
It has
to
a
another
hypertext
thing.
function.
But as I understand it, so I really am into the hashtag as a technology. I'm not how it's not in praxis, but in theory, because it does kind of still work. You know, like it's a crazy thing because it's indexing reality. It's an index of reality. So like I could conceivably search for hashtag IKEA that I read about on this piece of paper that somebody wrote down with a pen. I can go to the internet and find all the hashtag IKEA things.
Well, right? At this point, it's like those commercials in the early 2000s where it was like AOL keyword, and then it would tell you the thing to put in.
Right. Which I kind of think is an amazing thing that it can move between the internet and the real world. Again, in theory, what it does sucks.
The hashtag creates something that didn't exist in like speech and handwritten communication before, but it is like
it's an index. It existed at the back of books, but it's an index for reality.
It wasn't a way that people communicated. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
But now we communicate on the internet with a hashtag, so it's created that part in people's minds, right? So it's like, oh, this is what this means. The AOL keyword.
I guess the weird part about doing it in a guest book is that it doesn't actually serve the indexing function that way.
No, it's so weird. It's
because you could search any of the words that they wrote down on the page.
Yeah, to search for this.
But I get why it's there. I get why someone was like, because that's what they would have written in their Instagram caption.
Again, this is not cool in praxis.
No,
it's only cool in theory.
It's very dumb.
But it's very exciting in theory.
Yeah, it is exciting. I mean,
because their whole thing seemed like it was like an ad for IKEA.
That's the part of the story that cracks me up.
For this Airbnb, it was so fucking weird.
It's very weird.
Write down like everything they thought about IKEA. Like, why did they take that effort? It's so absurd.
Oh, because corporations are cults.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
Have you ever visited a Google campus?
It fully are. I was watching. Did you guys watch? There's a really great documentary about LuLaRoe.
Yeah, I saw that documentary.
I haven't seen the documentary, but I've read articles about it.
It's a very entertaining documentary, and I feel like it has a stealth thesis that like never is fully addressed, but that like by the time you're done, you come away with, which is corporations are exactly cults. All of them. Yeah. They are cults.
So are countries. I mean.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really entertaining, interesting, like it's funny, and you get to see these weird people doing this insane scam. But then also, I feel like when you walk away from it, you go, "Oh wow!" Like they just did their shit a little too. I mean, it's like the classic Baltimore politician thing. It's like you could have been polite about what you were doing and got away with it, and you just are a little too crass. And now we see how actually all the polite people are. That's basically as horrible as you would.
Yeah. Spilled beans.
From religion to nations to corporations are just rebranding reboots. All three of those things are the same thing.
Yeah.
And now it's just there's like no reason to pretend that they're not. I feel like people only pretend they're not out of habit and not because it serves a function. It's okay that corporations are cults now. Nobody actually is going to like be upset about it. We're just in the habit of pretending they're not.
That's an interesting perception. I feel like people will be very upset about it.
I hope that we get to find out.
So like Kennedy Krieger, which is a part of the Hopkinite cult, they're very much into the, like when I was going through my orientation and they said, You may be concerned that you're not going to be able to go out and have friends anymore because we're working you so hard. Don't worry, we have a piano bar. You know that. Yeah. That kind of stuff. And I straight up said, like, don't you guys feel like this is a cult trying to take over your life? And they were aghast. You know, like,
I wish I could have hung out there.
Well, I think if you're in the thing that's being accused of
Exactly.
being cult, it's different.
That's what I was gonna say, and that's kind of like how it's like the self-reflection is not really like a thing that we do. So,
right?
Like you can look, you can kind of like point out, but you can't point in. Like it's just not gonna happen.
Right. I can accept that maybe Google is a crazy cult, but I work for Subway. Subway's just a podunk little fast food joint. They're not a crazy cult, but they totally are. And then I can say that of course all those global brands are cults, but I work for just this little bookstore. You know?
Yeah.
But that's still a cult in a way too.
I think you could even to the point of like as a rule, like companies are cults, and then still
employment.
Yours is the exception, or like
or at the very least they use cult like strategy. You know, I don't know if they're successful cults, but
I think you
need to have a job to survive. If you don't have a job, you won't survive. You need us. It's the same thing a religion is saying. If you die without having religion, you'll burn forever. You need us.
With jobs, for many people, that's literally true, thanks to the world we built for ourselves.
I think it's also that
it's not
like
so imaginary, you know.
Yeah.
Like
well, I think religion also started out not imaginary. If you don't play by our religious rules, you won't get part of our food. We kill this calf together and eat together.
Yeah, you're absolutely not taken care of.
There's sort of a demand
out in the wild.
There's sort of a demand for lip service,
or killed.
Yeah. Sure. I feel like not most businesses, and some of this is just like, hey, we want the people who work here to be happy. But I think there also tends to be an attitude of you need to seem happy to be working here. Mm-hmm. Like that, there's a compelling, there's a compulsion to be like a satisfied employee in one way or another. And so then these businesses end up treating, like, even when they're abusive, they end up treating their people like, well, you need to really be happy to be here. I'm curious if there are businesses or workplaces that would be like, yeah, we get it. You're just here to do the thing. Like,
it's rare.
Like we don't require your emotional buy-in for this to like work for us. I think that there's going to be more of a demand for that kind of work in the future, just because
this is the Great Resignation, right? This is what produced the Great Resignation.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think
written up for your attitude problem, not being a team player.
Exactly, because I think that all comes from this very like 20th century idea of like, you know, like your career being your actual like life's work, and now it being like your career just being the thing that funds your actual life's work, which is usually just living.
Video games.
Or like video games, or like, you know, anything like writing poems or playing guitar in your basement or whatever. But like just the job being seen
fantasy
as this.
Football.
Yeah,
I'm really good at fantasy football.
Sure.
Well, and that's I talking to Matt Sealander so much, I realize in a way that I haven't before how many people, when their job is taken away, don't know why they're alive. Like when Matt thinks about how he won't be able to pick up trash anymore, he doesn't know why he exists.
That seems a little harsh.
It seems a little harsh. It's true though. Like when he wasn't going to be able to pick up trash, and he couldn't go to a hotel, he's obsessed with how he's just been in his house, because going someplace else, sleeping in another bed, makes him feel like he's doing something with his life, makes him feel like he's alive. If he just has to sit here being himself, he doesn't know why he's doing it. And so I think that's a way that corporate cults were able to say, like, you're alive because you show up here and you sit at this desk, and sometimes a piece of paper comes by this desk and you put the piece of paper someplace else. That's why you're alive. And people can be like, oh, thank God, because I couldn't come up with anything.
No, I have some insight into this.
You know what another big cult is? You know what another
Jen,
big cult is?
What? What's another cult?
The nuclear fucking family.
It's the same cult.
Yeah.
It's the same cult.
Major cult alert. Cult alert.
Jen, you haven't had a full-time job in a minute, right?
Almost a year.
Okay, so it's been that's longer than I thought. I thought it was shorter than that, but
I quit at the end of February last year.
I haven't had one for the first time in a long time. I have a full-time job for like 3 months now, and I see there's a raised hand here. Let me just finish.
No, that's clapping for the job year.
Okay, cool. And I started working part-time recently, just to make some money, you know. But it's funny because the world of working like has this magnetic force that pulls you back in. Not that I want to be, but I feel like if I like stay away from working for too long, I'm gonna have a hard time getting back into like a career or whatever. Like,
that's funny because my only goal after quitting my job was to never have a job again. So I don't have the anxiety about that.
I don't think
not even anxiety. I'm like aware of like a big force. I'm aware of like a force outside of me, like pulling me back into it. And it's
you've been indoctrinated for your entire life, and you'll remember.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't worry too much about. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not
it'll
even
be
worried.
different. It might actually feel better because you'll know that that's not real life. You'll be like, this is just what I'm doing this afternoon. Is it still? You know?
But the best periods of my life have always been when I'm not working. Like I guess there was like a year in my 20s where I was just not working at all.
Work is hell on earth. That's not surprising.
It is bad.
Yeah, my first Salvia trip was mostly me wondering why the hell I would ever go to my job the next day. And like, I had a panic attack about it. Like, why would I go to that office and manage a call center? Just why would I do it?
It's a question we all have to ask ourselves when we manage a call center.
That place was, I feel like, particularly scary. I was only there.
Oh, you worked there?
Well, I went. I got hired.
You didn't go when Mason hired you, right?
I'm not. I guess so. Maybe I forget who. I don't think you were there when I got hired, but
then Mason hired you.
But like,
because I think Mason was the boss after me, and then it got shut down.
Yeah, but you managed a call center.
Yeah, for a year.
Yeah,
we verified medical insurance information to find instances of Medicaid fraud.
Cool.
That place
what we were
really
doing was illegal.
Oh.
It was a terrifying place. I went once, and then I was like, the next day I couldn't bring myself to go back, and I wasn't even totally sure why. I just knew that it was a road that was terrifying to me to go down.
Yeah.
So at the second day, I called up and I was like, "Yeah, I can't come in today or any of the other days. So thank you for giving me this job. Goodbye. I'll see you never."
It was a weird scene, that place, Butler Lochte.
Great name.
So wait, so how's it been, Tim, since you quit?
Oh, really, really, really good. But weird. I kind of wish that I had not quit in the winter. I would have liked like more time outside, and my house is really cold too. So while I'm like having like a really good time, I just feel a little bit like reclusive, and that's kind of playing tricks with my head a little bit with like COVID and everything.
Yeah.
So
I put in 6 months notice in the fall, and I worked through the winter, and I quit at the end of the winter.
Yeah, that's smart. And now I'm working part-time, which is actually perfect. Like if I could just maintain a schedule like this, I actually feel like it'd be nice.
I don't think I'll be able to for like a long time. Also, like there's a whole issue of health insurance. I'm not sure how you deal with that or if you think about it, but it kind of like just aggravates me and makes me like paranoid all the time.
I think I
I
mean
have public health insurance, so
part of my thing is just like I refuse to make a decision based on fear of things like that. I'm just like, fuck you. I'm not deciding based on that, which could, fuck me in the end. But I just like won't. I just won't fucking do it. So I mean, for now I'm on Medicaid, but I think they're going to kick me off probably this year. And then I'll have to just see.
Why? For making too much money? What's the cutoff?
The threshold
17.
is like crazy.
Oh no, that's bad because I feel like I'm like very close to that, or perhaps
Yeah, I
even
think I
slightly
made
over.
probably like 22.
You guys should marry somebody who works for the government.
Oh God, that's horrible news. If I get kicked off that changes all my plans.
Well, I mean, I think
You never know.
I think probably if you're above that but still like pretty low and close to that, you can still get like heavily subsidized insurance.
I want it for free, or else it's like, why bother going to the freaking doctor?
I mean, I never go to the doctor
I
anyway.
bought
So
health insurance through the state, and it's almost like you might as well not have it. It's like
Yeah.
It's like has like a high deductible for like emergency situations, but it just feels like you're just throwing money away. Like I'm still not going to go to the doctor unless I really have to. Like this is going to be expensive. With the insurance, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think
sucks.
the only real point of it is that you don't get is that if you like get hit by a car, if you get to a point where it's like $100,000, like.
Isn't it interesting that that's like the thing that's like, what if you get hit by a car or if you're in a car accident? That's like the thing that is like,
because we're surrounded by these like death machines all the time.
That's what the health insurance is for.
Driving your cars.
It's in case something bad happens with you in a car.
It's true.
Or
It's terrifying.
Getting old is also getting hit by a car.
Right. Getting
that's
old
the
is
other problem.
You get
you're
just
slowly
hit by a car in
getting hit
slow
by a
motion.
car for the last third of your life.
Yeah.
So this is a very uplifting way to end our.
This is a relevant conversation going on right here.
No, it's real talk for sure. I mean,
kind of a downer, I guess. But anyway, wait. I think we were talking about like work, jobs, something I'm obsessed with, but like anyway, I do feel like there's like this force, a magnetic force in society that like, I don't know. Also, like, kind of, it is like tied to masculinity as well. I don't know if the dudeish people here have any sense of what I'm talking about. I'm sure it's mixed in with, the other side of that. But like with masculinity, it's like you're not trustworthy if you're not like doing something childish.
Totally. I feel like True Detective touches on this a little bit the first season, where like, although they're talking about family more than jobs, but like, a man defines himself by his employment, and women shouldn't work because it makes them have as much of an identity as a man, and like the nuclear family revolves around the man being the head of it, and we're all a part of his identity. Kind of thing,
That kind of thinking is still like present in the grand consciousness. Yeah,
for sure.
Totally.
It's still like if you're a guy, you're not like working. It's like,
who even are you? Yeah.
Or even if
what
you're
are you
like,
doing? Like, what?
Are you a
I
vagrant?
haven't had a full-time job since 2014, but I've had 5 part-time jobs. And when somebody asks me the question, so what do you do? I have to be like, I pick up trash and I clean houses and I work at a bar and I have a theater and I write, like it, and I'm embarrassed about it,
Right.
because I
Right.
can't define myself as one thing, so I don't have an identity.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's still this residual thing that for like a woman without a child. Well, where's your identity then?
I like over romanticizing when I get asked that question, and like pulling someone into an obvious fiction. I feel like is really fun. Like my thing when it was with the thing of people like, well, what do you do? I feel like I've kind of done this and that, but I want to be a poet. I'm working on a poem.
Well, that's eventually I started ditching all the things that I actually do for money and just told people I run a theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
But that's
people
literally
want.
true. That's what you do.
I think that's what people.
But it's
want
not
to
how I
hear,
survive.
too.
Right.
People.
But I know it's not true.
Even no matter how skeptical they might be that you're like telling them a tale or that your thing's like exaggerated or whatever, I do feel like everyone appreciates an answer that offers any kind of glimmer of hope for this world.
Well,
I mean, a lot of times now I just say I'm trying to never have a job again.
I think you're doing it like a community service by saying.
And they'll be like, "Oh," they're always just like.
That is, I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around that idea. Like that, it's so alien to the way that most people live their lives. I mean, I can't really imagine not
they're
having
also
a job.
usually kind of like, "Oh yeah, okay."
So you'll be
I'm
back.
Like, no, that's what I'm doing.
I remember really, really, really upsetting an entire call center of people when we got paid. And this is not a call center I was in charge of. I was the lowest rung of the ladder here. But we got paid on payday, and I got a check, and I didn't have a bank account, so I had to go to a check cashing place, and it's such a fucking hassle. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to have money? And just everybody got so fucking. It was like I said, wouldn't it be great if we could just eat babies? We didn't have to worry about how they were people. People got that mad that I was denying money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that force is that you're talking about, Tim, I think is named Mammon, and his name is written on our fucking bills.
Oh yeah.
In who we trust.
I was talking to someone, some like boomerish person on tour, and I said something about rich people, and she was like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't talk about rich people like it's them. Like you could be rich one day." And I was like, "I don't want that."
Yeah.
And she was just like, "What?" I was like,
Why
I do not want that.
Why would you want that?
I was like, no, that's not me. I will not be. And she was like, well, don't say that. You never know what'll happen. And I was like, no, I don't want to be that. I don't want that.
Yeah, if I become rich, something has gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And I will immediately ruin it on purpose.
Also, what the fuck is she talking about? No, you are not going to be rich. Like, even if,
I know. Oh, people
sorry,
are so
like,
crazy.
Like, no, just like some, I don't know how, I can't, sorry, I don't remember what you, she's not like someone you actually know, right? She was just a rando you were talking to. Like,
she was like it's not someone I
It's
really know.
she's a temporarily embarrassed millionaire.
Right? Yeah, like
right, exactly.
Oh, you're rich? Oops, what the fuck? Oh.
I mean, it's a very boomer mentality. I don't think anyone younger than a boomer could possibly think that way.
Yeah,
that's an
we're all
interesting-
hip to the scam now.
But are we all?
Oh,
maybe we are. I
The six of
don't
us.
know that us and people younger than us are necessarily all on board with that. But that may be my own fear talking.
I don't know.
I think more than there were when we were kids. I think
That's
more
for
the
sure.
kids now.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
but
that
feel like there's a critical mass that's still buying in.
Well, and I
But
think
maybe
that
I'm being negative.
because of the way internet culture works and because of the way media is created and consumed and celebrities are made now, or even micro celebrities, but like
Yeah.
you're given many examples of people who are our age or younger who have managed to become wealthy because they like post videos of whatever on the internet.
Their baby's diaper.
Yeah, sure. Like content
it's
because
true.
they generate content, and I think there's a content generation of wealthy people that kind of reinforces this idea that like, oh, this could happen for me,
And
because
it also feeds the kind of like hustle mentality.
it's democratized this sort of wealth seeking success, in that like not everybody thinks that they can be the next Bezos or Elon Musk or something, but they can probably be the next viral TikToker who makes a couple $100,000 a year from
Angel
ad
money.
revenue.
But that's still trying to be rich, right? They're not,
totally
trying to be rich. They're just trying to not have a job.
Yeah.
They're just trying to have a job inspiring people.
Well, that's
doing
the thing is though, that like being that kind, if that becomes your job,
That
if
is a
you're a
job.
TikToker, like it is a really difficult job.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna have a little more time of that happening, and then I think it's gonna become apparent that that's not all it cracked up to be, and
That is an optimistic outlook.
Maybe, I don't know. I feel like the return on that is less and less every year, because it's such a saturated lifestyle market thing.
I feel like there's going to be a few more gold rushes before we can stop looking for gold.
Sure, definitely. But I do think that
like
people are starting to
numerically-
realize that like even that micro celebrity is maybe not even making as much as I could make just having a boring office job.
I feel like a couple billion people need to die before we give up on that.
That might be the case.
Yeah.
With like a low enough amount of people, it might be impossible to be that popular because there's just not enough.
You can't sustain it. I mean,
the population who would care about your stupid boondoggle thing you post about.
I think that Buckminster Fuller calculated that the world can support 2 billion people and everyone can live like kings.
I believe that.
And until
the servants and peasants be?
Huh?
Then who would the peasants be? Because to be
that's his calculation, is like live like kings was the wrong idiom to use.
Okay.
Like everybody can
live well,
have all of the stuff, like not have to work for people and stuff.
All the fixes.
Right. Autonomy. I guess the way you can have the amount of people that can be on the planet and have every single one of them have autonomy is 2 billion.
Right. And he was also really pushing for a lot of like automation and like parts of our lives being made a lot easier by technology.
Yeah.
So not really dealing with the peasantry in the same way.
True.
I just wanted to say that it's after 1:30.
Yeah. I gotta go pick up a
Next-
chair.
Next time we have to. There's 2 more sections of this chapter, really, and it'll be nice to get in on them because they're both. I mean, I feel like each of them easily could maybe even take a whole nother session.
It's a long chapter.
Yeah. Well, we'll come in halfway.
So what are we
sun.
talking? 2 weeks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's shoot for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the 19th.
Cool.
Saturday the 19th. We like Saturday.
Sounds good.
If you guys want to do it here, we can do it here. Kenny did get a negative COVID test, but I thought everyone seemed like into doing
Where do you
it
find
online,
a
and
negative
kind of
one?
like-
The negative ones are the ones I want.
Negative ones are good and cool.
Yeah.
But
I've
if you
never
guys
had
want to do
COVID.
it here, we can do it here.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll touch base and figure out if we do that or not.
Let's get the chug.
All right. Well,
You guys can all
thanks
bring
for
all your cats, okay?
thanks for joining
All I got
Wolfpack.
is rabbits and a bird.
You can't bring the rabbits; they're fucking toast.
Bring the bird.
Thanks.
I'll
We
bring the
actually
bird.
had
Bring
Johann
the
Joseph,
bird.
Johann Joseph, and John all joined in and were in the chat today. So
Oh no.
thanks
we
to
ignored
them
them.
for showing up.
Sorry, we
didn't
ignored
give them
you.
their due diligence.
Yeah, I'm bad at looking at the chat, but that's okay.
We'll
work it
get
out.
better at it. We've been on such a long break.
Yep.
We'll follow up. We'll follow up next time.
Yeah, totally.
All right. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Bye.
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 Bye.